What's up, story lovers? Welcome to Harry Flicks. In today's video, we have a fantastic tale for you. What if Harry was raised by Grindelwald? Dark Wizard Prodigy. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you never miss a story. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for your continued support. Alright, let's jump right into it. Chapter 1, The Air of Darkness. The alpine wind howled outside, but 11-year-old Harry Potter barely noticed as sweat dripped down his forehead. He focused on the task before him, a series of floating silver orbs darting through the air of the training chamber. Too slow, Grindelwald's voice cut through the room. The aging wizard sat in a high-backed chair, his once golden hair now white but his mismatched eyes still sharp as ever. Your opponents won't politely wait while you deliberate, boy. Harry gritted his teeth and flicked his wand in a complex pattern. 3 of the orbs froze mid-air while a 4th exploded into blue flames. The 5th, however, zoomed past his defenses and struck him in the shoulder with a painful jolt. Sloppy, Grindelwald commented, rising from his chair with surprising agility for a man in his 140s. You're distracted today. I hit 4 out of 5, Harry countered, rubbing his shoulder. Last week I could barely hit 3. Grindelwald's face softened slightly, the closest thing to approval Harry could hope for. Progress, yes, but excellence demands perfection. He waved his hand, and the remaining orbs vanished. What's on your mind? Your Hogwarts letter. Harry nodded, surprised as always by how easily Grindelwald read him. It arrived yesterday. Are we really going through with this? Having second thoughts. Grindelwald approached, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the stone floor of their hidden fortress. After all these years of preparation? No. Harry said quickly. I'm ready. What if someone recognizes you? Grindelwald laughed, a sound that still held traces of the charisma that had once won him followers across Europe. The world believes me imprisoned or dead. Besides, his hand went to the elder wand concealed within his robes. I have methods of ensuring discretion. Harry nodded, knowing better than to question further. For as long as he could remember, this had been his life, training in isolation with one of history's most notorious dark wizards, preparing for a destiny Grindelwald promised would reshape the magical world. Come, Grindelwald said, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. Let's review your cover story once more over dinner. The dining room of their fortress was grand yet austere, with windows enchanted to show various landscapes from around the world, tonight displaying the streets of London, where they would soon travel. Harry ate hungrily, still depleted from the afternoon's training. Your parents, Grindelwald began their familiar ritual, were James and Lily Potter. Powerful wizards who died fighting for magical freedom, Harry recited. Killed by Voldemort when I was a baby, but not before my mother's protection spell rebounded his killing curse. Grindelwald nodded. And after their death? My Muggle relatives abandoned me at an orphanage. I was adopted by Henry Graff, a reclusive German-English wizard who homeschooled me in the Alps. Harry gestured to Grindelwald, who would assume this identity in public. Now I'm attending Hogwarts to complete my education formally. And if asked about your scar? Harry's hand unconsciously went to the lightning bolt on his forehead. A remnant of the night my parents died. I don't remember much about it. Grindelwald steepled his fingers. You must be cautious around Dumbledore. He sees too much. You've taught me occlumency since I was 7, Harry reminded him. My mind is shielded. Albus has ways of seeing truth without direct legilimency, Grindelwald said, a hint of old respect in his voice. He'll suspect something unusual about you regardless. The challenge will be keeping him from discovering what. Harry nodded, feeling the familiar mix of excitement and anxiety about their plan. Since he could remember, Grindelwald had prepared him for this infiltration. Tell me again why you took me, Harry said suddenly, pushing his plate away. It was a question he'd asked countless times over the years, each time hoping for a different answer. Grindelwald's mismatched eyes studied him. You know why? I felt the magical disturbance the night your parents died. When I investigated Godric's Hollow, I found you, a child who had somehow survived the killing curse. Your magical signature was extraordinary. After my escape from Nurmengard during the chaos of Voldemort's fall, I needed an heir. Someone to continue my work. What Grindelwald never mentioned, but Harry had pieced together from overheard conversations, was that the Dark Wizard had initially seen him merely as a weapon, a tool for revenge against Dumbledore. That changed as Harry grew, showing not just magical talent but a sharp mind that reminded Grindelwald of himself in his youth. "Get some sleep," Grindelwald said, rising from the table. "Tomorrow we enter Diagon Alley. Your first test begins." In his room, Harry stood before the mirror, studying his reflection. He looked nothing like the famous Harry Potter the Wizarding World might expect. His lightning scar, while present, was partly obscured by his black hair, which fell to his shoulders instead of the unruly cut seen in old photos of his father. Years of Grindelwald's training regimen had made him lean and fit rather than scrawny. Most striking were his eyes, still his mother's green, but with a calculating coldness that no 11-year-old should possess. Harry closed his eyes, recalling the first memory he had of Grindelwald, being carried through the snow as a toddler, looking up at the stern face of the man who would raise him. There had been no bedtime stories or childhood games in the years that followed. Instead, Grindelwald had taught him wandless magic basics by age 5, dueling by 7, and the foundations of the dark arts by 9. It wasn't a normal childhood, but Harry had never known any different. Grindelwald wasn't affectionate, but he was present, teaching, challenging, occasionally even praising Harry's magical accomplishments. The closest thing to a father he'd ever known. Harry opened the hidden compartment beneath his bed, extracting the photo he'd found in Grindelwald's study years ago, his parents, James and Lily, laughing together. Grindelwald rarely spoke of them beyond their magical abilities and their, admirable though misguided, fight against Voldemort. Harry sometimes wondered what they would think of his upbringing, of the plans Grindelwald had for him. Too late for such thoughts now. Tomorrow, he entered the Wizarding World as Harry Potter for the first time. Diagon Alley burst with color and noise, overwhelming Harry's senses after years in the isolated fortress. He walked beside Henry Graff, Grindelwald disguised with aging potions and glamour charms, his white hair now salt and pepper, his distinctive eyes now both brown, his face subtly reshaped. "Control your expression," Grindelwald murmured. "You look like you've never seen magic before." Harry immediately schooled his features, though his eyes continued cataloging everything, exits, defensive positions, notable wizards, as he'd been trained. "Sorry. It's just different seeing so many wizards in one place." Grindelwald nodded, seemingly satisfied. "First Gringotts, then your supplies." The Goblin Bank proved an interesting challenge. Harry watched Grindelwald subtly confund a teller to access the Potter Vault without the proper key, a display of wandless magic so slight Harry would have missed it without knowing what to look for. Inside the vault, Harry stared at the piles of gold his parents had left him. "Take only what we need," Grindelwald instructed. "We'll visit again when necessary." Their shopping proceeded methodically until they reached Ollivander's. Grindelwald hesitated at the entrance. "He has a gift for remembering every wand he's ever sold," he warned Harry. "Including mine, long ago. I'll wait outside. Remember your story." Harry nodded and entered alone, the bell tinkling softly above him. "Ah, Mr. Potter." Ollivander appeared from between the shelves, his silver eyes widening. "I wondered when I'd be seeing you." Harry tensed. "How did you have your mother's eyes," Ollivander said simply. "Though there's something different about them now. And your father's build, though you carry yourself unlike either of them." Harry's hand drifted toward where his practice wand would normally be holstered. "I've been raised by my adoptive father after my relatives abandoned me." Ollivander nodded thoughtfully. "I see. Well, let's find your wand, shall we?" What followed was a frustrating series of failed matches. Wand after wand reacted poorly or not at all in Harry's grip. With each rejection, Ollivander became more intrigued rather than discouraged. "Tricky customer," he muttered, disappearing into the back. He returned with a dusty box. "I wonder, try this one. Holly and Phoenix Feather, 11 inches. The moment Harry's fingers closed around it, he felt a rush of power unlike anything he'd experienced with his practice wands. Warmth spread through his arm as silver and gold sparks shot from the tip, illuminating the dusty shop. Ollivander clapped his hands. "Curious, very curious." "What's curious?" Harry asked, still mesmerized by the connection he felt with the wand. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix that gave the feather for your wand gave only one other. It's curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar." Harry's eyes snapped up. "Voldemort's wand?" Ollivander flinched at the name but nodded. "The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. I believe we can expect great things from you. After all, he who must not be named did great things, terrible, yes, but great." Harry paid 7 galleons for the wand, his mind racing with implications Grindelwald would surely want to analyze. As he exited the shop, he noticed Ollivander watching him with an unreadable expression. Outside, Grindelwald noted his troubled face. "What happened?" "My wand," Harry said quietly. "It's the brother to Voldemort's." For the first time that day, Grindelwald's disguise slipped slightly as genuine surprise crossed his features. "Fascinating. The connection between you runs deeper than the scar. This could be advantageous." Their final stop was for Harry's school robes. In Madame Malkin's, he found himself standing beside a pale, blonde boy being fitted. "Hogwarts too?" the boy asked imperiously. Harry nodded, recognizing an opportunity to establish connections. "First year." "Same here. My father's next door buying books, and mother's up the street looking at wands. Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I might smuggle one in somehow." Harry studied the boy, noting the expensive cut of his clothes and his entitled demeanor. "You've flown before, then?" "Since I was 6. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house team." "Know what house you'll be in yet?" Harry shrugged. "You can't really know until you're sorted." The boy sniffed. "Well, I know I'll be in Slytherin. All our family have been." "Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you?" Before Harry could respond, Madame Malkin announced the blonde boy was finished. "Well, see you at Hogwarts, I suppose," the boy said, stepping down. "I'm Malfoy, by the way. Draco Malfoy." Harry he caught himself, remembering Grindelwald's warning about revealing his identity too soon. "Just Harry," he finished. Draco raised an eyebrow but was ushered out by his mother before he could question further. Later, as they left Diagon Alley with Harry's supplies, Grindelwald asked, "Did you make any useful connections?" "Possibly," Harry replied. "Draco Malfoy, Lucius Malfoy's son, I'm guessing." Grindelwald nodded approvingly. "The Malfoys maintain significant political influence. Cultivate that relationship, but cautiously. Lucius was a Voldemort supporter, though he claimed the Imperius curse after the war." "Is that true?" Harry asked. Grindelwald's lip curled. "Few wizards truly act under compulsion. Most simply seek excuses for their choices when the consequences become inconvenient." The remaining weeks before September 1st passed in a flurry of intense preparation. Grindelwald drilled Harry on everything from Hogwarts history to the personal backgrounds of professors to the castle's rumored secret passages. "Dumbledore will be watching you from the moment you enter," Grindelwald warned, pacing the study where they spent evenings. "He'll know you're not the naive child he expected. Won't that make him suspicious?" Harry asked, flipping through Hogwarts, a history for the 3rd time. "Inevitably. But he'll first assume your relatives raised you poorly," then that your adoptive father was unconventional. Play into that assumption. Let him think he's uncovering your secrets while hiding the deeper truth. Harry nodded, absorbing the strategy. And my mission objectives? Grindelwald smiled thinly. Primary, map Hogwarts' defensive enchantments and identify their weaknesses. Secondary, assess Dumbledore's current activities and allies. Tertiary, locate any powerful artifacts within the castle. He paused, fixing Harry with an intense gaze. And most importantly, gain influence. Form connections with students from prominent families. Plant the seeds for future recruitment. The night before Harry's departure, Grindelwald presented him with 3 gifts, an enchanted journal that would transmit his written reports directly to a matching book in Grindelwald's possession, a silver ring with protective charms that doubled as an emergency port key, and a small wooden box. Open it, Grindelwald instructed. Inside, Harry found a vial of swirling silver memory. Whose is it? Mine, Grindelwald said quietly. From October 31st, 1981. The night I found you. Harry stared at the vial. You've never let me see this before. You were too young to understand its significance. Now, before you enter Hogwarts, you should know exactly what happened that night. Grindelwald produced a small pensieve. Are you ready? Harry nodded, his heart pounding as Grindelwald poured the memory into the stone basin. Together, they leaned forward, falling into the past. The memory began with Grindelwald in a forest clearing, his appearance younger but gaunt from his imprisonment. He was performing a complex spell involving runic circles when suddenly he stiffened, turning toward the distance as if hearing something. That magical disruption. Memory, Grindelwald muttered. Impossible power. The scene shifted to Godric's Hollow, where Grindelwald approached the smoking ruins of a house cautiously. Inside, he stepped over James Potter's body without a second glance, moving upstairs to find Lily Potter collapsed before a crib where baby Harry cried, bleeding from his lightning-shaped wound. Memory, Grindelwald stared at the infant, then at the pile of robes and ash nearby that were all that remained of Voldemort. His expression changed from curiosity to calculation to decision in seconds. So, he whispered, approaching the crib, you somehow defeated the most feared dark wizard of this age. What power lies within you, child? He extended a hand over Harry, murmuring spells that made the air around the baby shimmer with colorful auras. Whatever he saw made his eyes widen. Extraordinary, he breathed. Your magical core. I've never seen anything like it in one so young. The sound of distant voices broke his concentration. Someone was coming. Memory, Grindelwald made his decision, carefully lifting baby Harry. You deserve better than to become Dumbledore's pawn, he told the child. I will make you into something magnificent. With that, he disappeared with a crack, moments before heavy footsteps reached the nursery. The memory ended, and Harry found himself back in Grindelwald's study, his mind racing. You came for the magical disturbance, not for me specifically, Harry said quietly. Grindelwald nodded. I had no idea what I would find. But when I saw you, I recognized potential that neither Dumbledore nor anyone else would fully cultivate. They would have raised you as a symbol, a figurehead. I raised you as a sorcerer. Harry processed this, questions spinning through his mind. The pile of robes, that was Voldemort. He really died. His body was destroyed, Grindelwald corrected. But wizards of his caliber rarely perish so easily. I've long suspected he found methods to anchor himself to this world. Is that why you've trained me so hard? Because you think he'll return? Grindelwald's expression hardened. I've trained you because magical power like yours demands mastery. Whether Voldemort returns or not, you have the potential to reshape our world, to finish what I started decades ago. Harry nodded, feeling the weight of expectation on his shoulders. Tomorrow he would begin the mission he prepared for his entire life. King's Cross Station buzzed with morning commuters as Harry pushed his trunk trolley alongside the disguised Grindelwald. They paused between platforms 9 and 10. Remember everything I've taught you, Grindelwald said, his voice low. Trust no one completely. Not the teachers, not your classmates, not even the Sorting Hat. Harry nodded, studying the barrier. What about you? Where will you be? I've secured accommodations in Hogsmeade under my alias. Use the journal for regular updates, the ring only for emergencies. He straightened Harry's muggle jacket. When you pass through the barrier, Harry Potter officially enters the wizarding world. Every move you make, every relationship you form, every spell you cast will shape how they perceive you. Choose wisely. It was the closest thing to a paternal moment they'd ever shared. Harry swallowed, suddenly nervous despite years of preparation. I won't disappoint you, he promised. Grindelwald's expression softened fractionally. I know. He checked his pocket watch. Go now. We shouldn't be seen together once you cross. Harry took a deep breath and pushed his trolley toward the barrier, passing through to platform 9 3/4 where the Scarlet Hogwarts Express waited amid clouds of steam. Families crowded the platform, parents hugging children, friends reuniting, owls hooting in their cages. Moving purposefully to avoid attention, Harry loaded his trunk onto the train and found an empty compartment near the back. Through the window, he watched other students say goodbye to their parents, feeling a strange hollowness. Grindelwald hadn't followed him through the barrier. The compartment door slid open, and a tall, red-headed boy peered in. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Harry assessed the boy quickly, worn clothes, hand-me-down trunk, freckles. Almost certainly a Weasley, based on Grindelwald's descriptions of prominent wizarding families. Go ahead, Harry said with a practiced casual smile. I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley, the boy said, confirming Harry's deduction. Harry, he replied, deliberately omitting his surname. According to Grindelwald's plan, he would reveal his identity during the sorting, maximizing its impact. First year too? Ron asked, settling in. Harry nodded. You? Yeah. Got 5 brothers who've been already, so I know what to expect. Still nervous though. Before Harry could reply, the compartment door opened again to reveal a bushy-haired girl already wearing her Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one, she said in a bossy voice. No toads here, Ron replied. The girl's attention shifted to Harry. Oh, hello. I'm Hermione Granger. And you are? Just getting acquainted, Harry deflected smoothly. We haven't seen any toads, but if we do, we'll let Neville know. Hermione frowned slightly at the non-answer but was distracted by the wand peeking from Ron's pocket. Oh, were you about to do magic? Let's see, then. Ron looked caught off guard. I was just showing, a spell my brother George gave me, to turn my rat yellow. He pulled out a rather pathetic-looking sleeping rat and cleared his throat. Sunshine, daisies, buttermellow, turn this stupid, fat rat yellow. Nothing happened. Are you sure that's a real spell? Hermione asked skeptically. It doesn't sound very good. I've tried a few simple spells myself, and they've all worked for me. She sat down uninvited. Nobody in my family's magic at all, so it was a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased. Hogwarts is the best school of witchcraft there is, I've heard. I've learned all our course books by heart, of course, I just hope it's enough. Harry's eyebrows rose slightly at the torrent of words. He'd been trained to seek out the brightest students as potential allies, but Hermione's obvious Muggle-born status complicated matters according to Grindelwald's worldview. Still, her intellect could make her valuable. Learning the theory is useful, Harry said carefully, but practical application is where real mastery happens. Hermione turned to him with interest. Have you practiced much magic already, then? Some, Harry said vaguely. My guardian believed in hands-on education. That's not allowed outside school, Hermione said immediately. Underage wizards aren't permitted to use magic at home. The trace only activates after your first year at Hogwarts, Harry countered, drawing on knowledge Grindelwald had shared. Before that, the Ministry can't distinguish between a child's magic and an adult's in the same household. Hermione looked surprised, then thoughtful. That's not mentioned in magical education standards and regulations. It wouldn't be, Harry said with a slight smile. The Ministry prefers parents think all underage magic is traceable. The conversation was interrupted when the compartment door slid open once more, revealing Draco Malfoy flanked by two large boys. "They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter is in this compartment," Draco said, his eyes scanning the occupants before landing on Harry. "So it's you, is it? The boy who wouldn't give his surname in Madame Malkin's." Harry met his gaze steadily. "I am." Ron's jaw dropped. "You're Harry Potter. Why didn't you say so?" "This is Crabbe and Goyle," Draco continued, ignoring Ron. "And I'm Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough that might have been hiding a snigger. Draco shot him a cold look. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. Red hair, hand-me-down robes, you must be a Weasley." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He extended his hand, and Harry considered it carefully. According to Grindelwald's strategy, allies in Slytherin would be crucial. However, alienating other houses immediately would limit his influence. Harry stood slowly, radiating the controlled confidence Grindelwald had instilled in him. "I appreciate the offer, Draco, but I prefer to judge people individually rather than by family name." That said, he extended his hand. "Connections with old families like yours are certainly valuable." Draco seemed caught between offense at not receiving immediate deference and satisfaction at being acknowledged as valuable. He shook Harry's hand with narrowed eyes. "Interesting perspective, Potter. We'll see how long it lasts at Hogwarts." After Draco and his companions left, Ron stared at Harry. "Blimey, you're really him. I thought Fred and George were just having me on about Harry Potter being on the train." "Yes, I'm really him," Harry confirmed, observing how Ron's demeanor instantly changed. "Do you have the, you know?" Ron pointed at his forehead. Harry sighed internally but pushed back his hair to reveal the lightning scar, knowing this would be a common request. "Wicked," Ron breathed. "And you survived the killing curse when you know who attacked you? What was that like? Do you remember it?" "Ron!" Hermione scolded. "That's a terribly personal question." For once, Harry appreciated her interruption. "I was a baby," he said shortly. "I don't remember much." This wasn't entirely true. Through Grindelwald's memory and his own fragmented recollections, Harry had impressions of green light and a high, cold laugh. But these weren't details he planned to share. As the journey continued, Harry carefully balanced between friendliness and reserve, gathering information while revealing little about himself. He deflected personal questions, redirected conversations to others, and observed dynamics between his traveling companions. When the food trolley came around, Harry bought a sampling of everything, partly because he'd never tried wizarding sweets before and partly as a strategic gesture of generosity toward Ron, whose sandwich looked particularly unappetizing. "Help yourself," Harry offered, noting how Ron's initial hesitation quickly gave way to enthusiasm. Simple but effective, the first step in building loyalty through small kindnesses. As they neared Hogwarts, Harry excused himself to change into his robes, using the moment alone to center himself. Tonight, everything would change. He would be sorted, publicly identified, and begin his mission in earnest. He touched the concealed ring on his finger, drawing comfort from the connection to Grindelwald it represented. Whatever happened next, he was prepared. The first years crossed the lake in small boats, Hogwarts Castle looming above them with windows gleaming in the night. Despite his training, Harry couldn't help feeling awestruck at his first sight of the ancient fortress. The raw magical energy emanating from it was unlike anything he'd experienced, even in Grindelwald's most heavily enchanted chambers. "It's magnificent," Hermione whispered beside him, perhaps the first genuine sentiment she'd expressed without accompanying trivia. Harry nodded in agreement. No description could capture the imposing yet welcoming presence of Hogwarts. He felt something unexpected as they approached, a sense of coming home that he'd never experienced before. He pushed the feeling aside. Sentimentality was a weakness, Grindelwald had taught him. The castle was his mission, not his sanctuary. Professor McGonagall met them in the entrance hall, her stern expression surveying the new students. Harry analyzed her quickly, powerful magical signature, rigid posture suggesting inflexibility, shrewd eyes that missed little. A formidable opponent or valuable ally, depending on how events unfolded. As she explained the sorting and house system, Harry sensed someone watching him. Glancing up toward the grand staircase, he caught a brief glimpse of a tall, silver-bearded wizard before the figure disappeared. Dumbledore. Already observing. Harry strengthened his mental shields instinctively. The first years entered the great hall to a chorus of gasps and whispers. The enchanted ceiling reflected the night sky, thousands of candles floated overhead, and 4 long tables stretched before them filled with students in black robes. Harry catalogued everything while maintaining an expression of appropriate wonder. At the front of the hall sat the professors, and at the center, in a throne-like chair, Albus Dumbledore watched the proceedings with twinkling blue eyes that seemed to find Harry immediately. The young wizard met his gaze briefly before looking away, careful not to allow extended eye contact. The Sorting Hat sang its song about the 4 houses, and Harry assessed each description critically. Gryffindor's bravery could be recklessness, Ravenclaw's wisdom sometimes lacked action, Hufflepuff's loyalty might become blind following, and Slytherin's ambition could turn to ruthlessness without moral anchoring. Every house had strengths to utilize and weaknesses to exploit. McGonagall began calling names. Harry watched each sorting carefully, noting which students took longer to place and which were decided instantly. Hermione went to Gryffindor after nearly a minute under the hat, interesting, given her obvious Ravenclaw qualities. Draco Malfoy was placed in Slytherin before the hat fully touched his head, exactly as expected. Potter, Harry. The hall fell silent, then erupted in whispers as Harry stepped forward. He walked with deliberate confidence, neither rushing nor hesitating. At the staff table, he noticed several professors leaning forward with interest. The hat dropped over his eyes, and a small voice spoke in his ear. My, what have we here? Difficult, very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see, and a brilliant mind. There's talent, oh yes, and a thirst to prove yourself. But what's this? Occlumency shields at your age? Fascinating. Harry tensed. He hadn't expected the hat to detect his mental barriers. Don't worry, the hat chuckled. I don't need to break your shields to sort you. The very fact you have them tells me much. Someone has trained you extensively, someone with particular methods. Harry concentrated, carefully allowing the hat access to selected thoughts and memories while keeping others locked away. Ah, selective cooperation. Clever boy. I see ambition, cunning, and tremendous potential for greatness. You've been raised to value power, yet there's something else buried deep, a capacity for connection you've barely explored. Just sort me, Harry thought impatiently. Not so fast, the hat replied. You're quite the puzzle, Mr. Potter. Slytherin would help you on your path to greatness, there's no doubt about that. But I wonder if that's truly what you need. I'm prepared for any house, Harry thought firmly. Prepared, yes. You've been prepared for everything, haven't you? But preparation isn't the same as belonging. The hat seemed to be enjoying their exchange. Your mind says Slytherin, your abilities say Ravenclaw, your heritage says Gryffindor, and something deeper, something you've yet to acknowledge, whispers Hufflepuff. Harry's patience wore thin. Make your decision. Very well. Since you've yet to discover who you truly are beneath all that training, better be Gryffindor. The last word echoed through the hall as the Gryffindor table erupted in cheers. Harry removed the hat, momentarily stunned. Gryffindor. Grindelwald had prepared him for Slytherin or possibly Ravenclaw. This complicated matters. As he approached the Gryffindor table, Harry quickly adjusted his strategy. Gryffindor offered different advantages: closer proximity to Dumbledore's favorites, a house reputation above suspicion, and access to different social circles. He could work with this. The Weasley twins chanted, "We got Potter. We got Potter," while others scrambled to make room for him. Harry sat between a prefect who introduced himself as Percy Weasley and another first-year named Neville Longbottom, the boy who'd lost his toad. Harry remembered Grindelwald mentioning the Longbottoms, well-respected purebloods who'd been tortured to insanity by Voldemort's followers. Another potential connection worth cultivating. Ron joined him in Gryffindor shortly after, looking relieved as he collapsed into a seat across from Harry. The sorting concluded with Zabini, Blaise, going to Slytherin, and Dumbledore rose to speak. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you." Food appeared on the golden plates, and conversations erupted around Harry. He participated enough to seem engaged while observing everything, which professors spoke to each other, which students commanded respect at each table, how prefects interacted with younger students. "That's Professor Snape, the potions master," Percy informed him when he caught Harry looking at the staff table. "Brilliant at potions but favors his own house, he's head of Slytherin." Harry studied the hook-nosed professor with greasy black hair. Something about Snape's expression when he glanced toward Harry suggested personal animosity rather than mere suspicion. "Interesting. And next to him?" Harry asked, indicating a nervous-looking young man in a purple turban. "Professor Quirrell, teaches defense against the dark arts. New this year. Used to teach Muggle studies but took a year off to get practical experience. They say he encountered vampires in Romania and was never quite the same." Harry nodded, making mental notes. As he reached for his goblet, his gaze accidentally met Snape's across the hall. A sharp pain lanced through his scar, making him wince. "You all right, Harry?" Ron asked through a mouthful of potato. "Fine," Harry said, breaking the eye contact. The pain vanished instantly. Another data point to analyze later. After dinner, Dumbledore gave notices about forbidden items, the off-limits forest, and the intriguing announcement that the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry's interest peaked immediately. Objective identified, whatever was hidden in that corridor would be worth investigating. As the prefects led them to Gryffindor Tower, Harry memorized their path, noting secret passages Percy pointed out and others the prefect seemed to deliberately avoid mentioning. The portrait of the fat lady swung open at the password, Caput Draconis, revealing the cozy Gryffindor common room with its comfortable armchairs, roaring fire, and red and gold decor. In the first-year boys' dormitory, Harry claimed the bed between Ron's and Neville's, strategically positioning himself for easy conversation with both. As the other boys chatted excitedly about the feast and their expectations for classes, Harry unpacked methodically, securing his trunk with subtle protective spells Grindelwald had taught him. When the others finally drifted to sleep, Harry sat on his bed behind drawn curtains and opened the enchanted journal. By wand light, he wrote his first report, sorted into Gryffindor unexpectedly. Established initial connections with Weasley, influence through numbers, Granger, exceptional intellect, Longbottom, old family, and maintained neutral standing with Malfoy, Slytherin access. Dumbledore announced third-floor corridor restricted, probable location of valuable artifact. Professor Snape displays unusual interest, possible prior connection to investigate. My scar reacted painfully to eye contact with him. Mental shields holding. Will begin mapping castle layout tomorrow. Further instructions. The ink faded into the page, and Harry waited. Minutes later, Grindelwald's precise handwriting appeared, Gryffindor unexpected but workable. Continue rapport building across houses. Investigate third-floor corridor cautiously, likely contains object removed from Gringotts Vault 713 during July break-in attempt, monitor newspapers. Snape was schoolmate of your parents, former Death Eater who switched sides. Scar reaction concerning, monitor and report any recurrence. Maintain schedule, classes by day, exploration by night. Report weekly unless urgent developments. Harry closed the journal, processing this information. Gellert's network of informants apparently extended to Gringotts itself if he knew about a specific vault. As he lay back on his bed, Harry felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of him thrilled at the beginning of his mission, the challenge of navigating this new environment, the opportunities to prove his worth to Grindelwald. But another part, one he rarely acknowledged, wondered what his life might have been if Grindelwald hadn't taken him that night, if he'd grown up knowing nothing of magic until his Hogwarts letter arrived, like Hermione. Would he still be the same person? No point in such speculation. His path had been set years ago in the ruins of Godric's Hollow. Harry was Grindelwald's heir, his student, his weapon. Hogwarts was just another training ground, another step toward the future they would build together. As sleep claimed him, Harry dreamed of green light, high laughter, and a pair of mismatched eyes watching him from the darkness. Chapter 2, Playing both sides. Harry woke before dawn, a habit drilled into him through years of Grindelwald's pre-sunrise training sessions. The other Gryffindor boys snored peacefully as he slipped out of bed and performed a series of stretching exercises beside the window. Outside, the grounds were still dark, the lake a black mirror reflecting the fading stars. For a moment, he felt disoriented. No alpine winds. No Grindelwald barking instructions. Just the soft breathing of schoolboys who'd never had to dodge curses before breakfast. Harry pulled out a small notebook, separate from his communication journal, and sketched the path they'd taken from the Great Hall to Gryffindor Tower yesterday. He'd already memorized 7 key corridors, 4 staircases, including one that moved, and identified 3 potential secret passages marked by suspicious drafts. "What are you doing up so early?" Ron's sleepy voice came from behind him. Harry closed the notebook smoothly. "Just making notes about the castle. I don't want to get lost on our first day." Ron yawned enormously. "Mental, that's what you are. We've got years to figure out where everything is." Harry smiled slightly. "I like being prepared." As they dressed for breakfast, Harry observed his dorm-mates more carefully. Besides Ron and Neville, there were Dean Thomas, tall, artistic, muggle-raised, and Seamus Finnegan, quick-tempered, half-blood, prone to accidents. Each presented different strategic values, Dean's outsider perspective on magic, Seamus's connections to both worlds, Neville's pure-blood status, Ron's family's proximity to Dumbledore. "Been staring at that schedule for 5 minutes," Ron said, waving a hand in front of Harry's face. "It's just classes, not battle plans." Harry blinked, realizing he'd been mentally categorizing each subject based on Grindelwald's intelligence about the professors. "Just eager to start," he said, folding the parchment. "Let's get breakfast." The Great Hall buzzed with activity as students compared schedules and owls delivered mail. Harry scanned the room systematically, Dumbledore absent, Snape watching the Slytherin table, Quirrell nervously picking at his food. At the Slytherin table, Draco caught his eye and gave a subtle nod, which Harry returned. Connection maintained. "Mail's here," someone shouted as hundreds of owls streamed into the hall. Harry hadn't expected any post, Grindelwald wouldn't risk sending anything by owl, but to his surprise, a handsome eagle owl landed before him, dropping a small package before soaring away. "Who's sending you things already?" Ron asked through a mouthful of sausage. Harry examined the package carefully before opening it. Inside was a sleek silver pocket watch and a note in unfamiliar handwriting. "Your father would have wanted you to have this. It belonged to your grandfather. Use it well." No signature. Harry turned the watch over, finding the Potter family crest engraved on the back. A family heirloom? Who would have access to such a thing? He slipped it into his pocket, mind racing with possibilities. "Nice watch," Hermione commented, sliding onto the bench across from them. "Is that silver?" "Family heirloom, apparently," Harry said, not entirely lying. "That's wonderful. Having connections to your family must be comforting." Harry nodded noncommittally. "We should head to class. Transfiguration first, right?" Professor McGonagall didn't disappoint. After transforming her desk into a pig and back, she launched into a complex lecture on transformation theory. When she assigned them to turn matches into needles, Harry deliberately moderated his performance, achieving the transformation on his third try rather than his first, earning 10 points for Gryffindor while not revealing the full extent of his abilities. Hermione succeeded shortly after him, beaming when McGonagall showed both their needles to the class. As they filed out afterward, she fell into step beside him. "How did you manage it so quickly?" she asked. "I've been practicing the theory for weeks, but you made it look effortless." Harry shrugged. "My guardian emphasized visualization. See the object becoming what you want, not just waving your wand and saying words. That's not in any of the books," Hermione frowned. "Not everything is," Harry said, spotting an opportunity. "Magic's intuitive sometimes. The books are just starting points." Hermione looked torn between skepticism and fascination. Maybe we could study together sometime? Compare approaches?" Harry smiled. "I'd like that." Potions presented a different challenge. The moment Harry entered the dungeon classroom, Snape's black eyes fixed on him with unmistakable hostility. During roll call, the professor paused at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." Draco and his Slytherin friends sniggered. Harry maintained eye contact, his mental shields firmly in place. Snape launched into a poetic speech about potion making, then suddenly barked, "Potter! What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry recognized the ingredients for the draught of living death, a sixth-year potion Grindelwald had him brew last year. But first-years wouldn't know that. "I believe those create a sleeping potion, sir," Harry answered carefully. "Though I don't know its name." Snape's eyes narrowed. "Where would you look if I told you to find a bezoar?" "The stomach of a goat," Harry replied promptly. This was standard antidote knowledge. "What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" "They're the same plant, also called aconite." A flicker of surprise crossed Snape's face before his expression hardened. "For someone raised by muggles, you seem remarkably well informed, Potter. 1 point to Gryffindor for basic preparation." His tone made the point sound like an insult. Though clearly fame isn't everything. As they began brewing a simple boil-curing potion, Harry partnered with Neville, who trembled so badly he nearly added porcupine quills before taking the cauldron off the fire. "Wait," Harry said, catching his wrist. "That would cause an explosion." Neville paled. I nearly, "It's okay," Harry said quietly. "Just follow the instructions step by step. I'll help." By the end of class, their potion was passable, not perfect, but far better than it would have been without Harry's intervention. As they cleaned up, Neville gave him a grateful look. "Thanks for saving me from disaster," he mumbled. "Gran would have been furious if I'd blown up the classroom on the first day." Harry saw an opening. "Your grandmother raised you?" Neville nodded. "After my parents, well, they're in St. Mungo's. Death Eaters tortured them right after you-know-who disappeared. They never recovered." Harry's chest tightened unexpectedly. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it. "My parents died fighting Voldemort too." Neville flinched at the name but looked at Harry with new understanding. "You say his name." "Fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself," Harry quoted something Grindelwald often said, though ironically about Dumbledore. "I wish I were brave like you," Neville sighed. "I'm practically a squib." Harry shook his head. The hat put you in Gryffindor for a reason. And magic isn't just about power, it's about control and intention too. The words came automatically, another Grindelwald teaching, but Harry realized he genuinely wanted to help Neville improve. Was it strategic relationship building or something else? He wasn't sure. As September progressed, Harry established a careful routine. By day, he attended classes, deliberately performing well but not exceptionally in most subjects. He excelled openly in defense against the dark arts, despite Quirrell's stuttering incompetence, and charms, where showing talent wouldn't raise suspicions. By night, he explored the castle, methodically mapping corridors and identifying defensive enchantments. The invisibility cloak he'd discovered, in his trunk, actually planted there by Grindelwald through an intermediary, proved invaluable for these midnight expeditions. His weekly reports to Grindelwald grew more detailed, castle mapping 40% complete. Identified anti-apparition wards anchored to foundation stones in dungeons. Third floor corridor guarded by three-headed dog, easily bypassed with musical enchantment. Discovered room of requirement on 7th floor, potential secure base of operations. Cultivating relationships with key students in all houses through study groups. Professors suspect nothing beyond normal academic aptitude. Grindelwald's replies were typically brief but encouraging, excellent progress. The Cerberus guard something valuable, likely the object from Vault 713. Continue monitoring Quirrell, sources suggest unusual travel patterns prior to his appointment. The room of requirement was rumored but never confirmed during my time, impressive discovery. Regarding student connections, prioritize those with ministry parents. Harry was particularly proud of his study group strategy. What began as occasional sessions with Hermione expanded to include students from all houses, Ron and Neville from Gryffindor, Hannah Abbott and Susan Bones from Hufflepuff, Terry Boot and Padma Patil from Ravenclaw, and even Blaise Zabini from Slytherin, though Draco refused to participate, maintaining their connection privately. The arrangement served multiple purposes, gathering intelligence on various families, establishing Harry as helpful rather than threatening, and creating a network of potential future allies. It also, unexpectedly, became something Harry genuinely enjoyed. "You explain things better than the professors sometimes," Susan told him one afternoon as they practiced levitation charms. As niece of the head of magical law enforcement, she was a particularly valuable contact. "I just think about magic differently," Harry replied, helping her adjust her wand movement. "Try visualizing the feather's weight disappearing instead of forcing it upward. Wingardium Leviosa." Susan's feather floated smoothly upward. It worked. Harry smiled, feeling an unfamiliar warmth at her success. Was this pride? Not in himself, but in someone else. The sentiment felt foreign. Later, as they packed up their books, Hermione lingered behind. "Harry," she said hesitantly, "I've been wondering, where did you learn so much about magic before coming to Hogwarts? You said your Muggle relatives abandoned you, but you know things even purebloods in our year don't." Harry tensed internally while maintaining an easy expression. "My adoptive father was unconventional. He believed magical education should start early. But that's against ministry regulations," Hermione pressed. "He wasn't big on regulations," Harry said with a deliberately casual shrug. "Besides, it was mostly theory and controlled practice." Hermione didn't look convinced but dropped the subject. Harry made a mental note to be more cautious around her. Her intelligence made her both valuable and dangerous. October brought rain and increasingly complex classwork. Harry divided his time carefully between academics, exploration, and relationship building. During one midnight excursion to the library's restricted section, he discovered something unexpected, a photo album misplaced on a lower shelf. Opening it revealed pictures of his parents during their Hogwarts years. James Potter laughing with 3 friends. Lily Evans, before she became Potter, studying under a tree. The 2 of them at graduation, then at their wedding. Images of a life Harry had never known, contradicting the stern, power-focused wizards Grindelwald had described. His father hadn't looked like a warrior for magical supremacy but rather a mischievous, popular boy. His mother's smile showed warmth, not the cold determination Grindelwald had attributed to her. Most surprisingly, in many photos, they were surrounded by friends, including Muggle-borns, looking genuinely happy. Harry slipped the album into his robes, heart pounding. This wasn't intelligence for Grindelwald. This was personal. That night, behind his bed curtains, he examined each photo carefully, searching for clues about who his parents really were. The next day, he approached Professor Flitwick after Charms class. "Excuse me, Professor," he said. "I was wondering if you knew my mother. I found some old photos, and I heard you were teaching when she was a student." Flitwick beamed. "Lily Evans. One of my finest students, brilliant at charms. You have her talent, I've noticed. What was she like?" Harry asked, feeling oddly vulnerable. "Extraordinarily kind," Flitwick said, his voice softening. "She stood up for younger students, especially Muggle-borns facing prejudice. Her friendship with Severus Snape was quite remarkable, actually, bridging the Gryffindor-Slytherin divide." Harry blinked in surprise. "She was friends with Professor Snape?" "Oh yes, from before Hogwarts. They grew up in the same town. Quite inseparable until their 5th year." Flitwick suddenly looked uncomfortable. "But perhaps Professor Snape should tell you more himself." "Thank you, Professor," Harry said, his mind reeling. His mother, friends with Snape. And a defender of Muggleborns. This contradicted everything Grindelwald had implied about his parents supporting magical superiority. Over the following weeks, Harry cautiously gathered more information. From Professor McGonagall, he learned his father had been a transfiguration prodigy but also an incorrigible troublemaker with a good heart. From Hagrid, during a carefully orchestrated tea visit, he received more photos and stories of his parents' defiance against Voldemort. None of it aligned with Grindelwald's narrative. During one study session, Harry casually asked Neville about the war against Voldemort. "Gran says your parents were heroes," Neville said. "They fought you-know-who directly 3 times and escaped. They were part of Dumbledore's secret organization." "Dumbledore's organization?" Harry repeated, feigning ignorance. "The Order of the Phoenix," Susan Bones interjected. "My aunt told me about it. A group fighting you-know-who when the Ministry was infiltrated. Your parents were key members, along with the Longbottoms and others." Harry processed this, a cold feeling spreading through his chest. Had Grindelwald lied about his parents' allegiances? About their beliefs? About everything? That night, he stared at his communication journal for a long time before writing, discovered contradictory information about parents' activities during war. Multiple sources indicate close alliance with Dumbledore and opposition to pureblood supremacy. Please clarify. The response came hours later, longer than Grindelwald's usual replies. People are complex, Harry. Your parents fought against Voldemort, yes, but their motivations were more nuanced than Dumbledore's propaganda suggests. They opposed Voldemort's methods and madness, not the fundamental goal of magical liberation. Many joined Dumbledore not out of ideological alignment but pragmatic necessity against a greater threat. Remember, history is written by victors. Don't let Hogwarts sentiment cloud your judgment. Focus on your mission. The explanation seemed reasonable, but doubt had taken root. Harry found himself watching his fellow students with new eyes, particularly the Muggle-borns like Hermione, whom Grindelwald's ideology considered lesser. She certainly didn't seem lesser in any meaningful way. In fact, her magical theory often surpassed purebloods like Ron or Draco. These thoughts troubled him as Halloween approached. During the feast, Harry picked at his food, distracted by the date's significance, 10 years exactly since his parents' death, since Grindelwald had taken him. "You okay, Harry?" Ron asked through a mouthful of pie. "You've barely touched your treacle tart." "Just thinking," Harry replied. "It's 10 years today since Voldemort killed my parents." Ron choked slightly. Blimey, I didn't realize. Sorry, mate. Before Harry could respond, Professor Quirrell burst into the hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know. He collapsed in a dead faint. The hall erupted in chaos until Dumbledore shot purple firecrackers from his wand and ordered prefects to lead students back to dormitories. As Percy Weasley gathered the Gryffindors, Harry grabbed Ron's arm. Hermione doesn't know, he whispered urgently. Know what? About the troll. She's been in the bathroom crying all afternoon after what Malfoy said about her having no friends. Ron looked guilty. We've got to tell a teacher. No time, Harry said, already slipping away from the group. Come on. They ducked down a side corridor toward the girls' bathroom. Harry moved with purpose, mind racing through combat scenarios Grindelwald had drilled into him. A mountain troll was magically resistant but physically vulnerable at the joints and eyes. Its reach could be neutralized by attacking from behind or above. The corridor filled with a foul stench as they rounded the corner and saw it, 12 feet tall, granite-gray skin, a tiny head perched on a boulder-like body. It dragged a massive wooden club along the floor, headed straight for the girls' bathroom. It's leaving the dungeons, Ron whispered. Should we go back? Harry shook his head, calculating rapidly. No time. We need to get Hermione out before it reaches the bathroom. Too late. A high-pitched scream came from inside. Harry's training took over. He sprinted toward the bathroom, wand drawn, Ron following reluctantly behind. Inside, they found Hermione shrinking against the wall, the troll advancing on her, knocking sinks from the wall as it went. Distract it. Harry commanded, grabbing a broken tap and hurling it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then turned toward the noise. Hermione, move. Harry shouted, but she remained frozen in terror. The troll was quicker than it looked. It swung its club, forcing Harry to dive sideways. Ron threw a metal pipe, hitting the troll's shoulder. It turned toward him, giving Harry an opening. In that moment, instinct overrode caution. Harry pointed his wand and cast a spell Grindelwald had taught him for combating larger magical creatures, Conjunctivo. The curse hit the troll's eye, causing it to howl in pain and thrash wildly. Its club swung dangerously close to Hermione. Ron! Harry called. Levitate the club when it swings next. Ron looked terrified but raised his wand. As the troll swung again, he performed the levitation charm they'd practiced that day, Wingardium Leviosa. The club flew from the troll's grasp, rose high into the air, and dropped with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed, then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the room tremble. Harry approached cautiously, wand still raised. It's unconscious, not dead, he confirmed, examining it with clinical detachment. Hermione was the first to speak. Is that, how did you know to target its eyes? And what spell was that? It wasn't in our textbooks. Before Harry could formulate a safe answer, thundering footsteps announced the arrival of Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell. McGonagall looked furious, while Quirrell whimpered at the sight of the troll. Snape bent over the creature, his calculating gaze moving from it to Harry. What on earth were you thinking? McGonagall demanded. You could have been killed. To everyone's surprise, Hermione spoke up. It was my fault, Professor. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could handle it. If Harry and Ron hadn't found me, I'd be dead. Harry kept his expression neutral while his mind raced. Why was she lying for them? McGonagall deducted 5 points from Hermione and awarded 5 each to Harry and Ron for sheer dumb luck. As they left, Harry noticed Snape's leg bleeding beneath his robes, and the professor noticing his observation. Later, in the common room, Hermione approached them awkwardly. Thanks for saving me, she said quietly. Ron shrugged, ears red. No problem. Friends look out for each other, right? Hermione's face lit up, and Harry felt an unexpected twist in his chest. They'd just included her in their circle without hesitation, without calculation. It felt different from his strategic relationship building. "That spell you used on the troll," Hermione whispered when Ron went to fetch exploding snap cards. "The conjunctivitis curse is fifth-year magic, Harry." Harry met her gaze steadily. "I read ahead." "No first year could cast that successfully without practice," she pressed. "And you didn't hesitate, like you'd done it before." "I told you my guardian taught me practical magic early," Harry said carefully. "Apparently it paid off tonight." Hermione studied him. "There's more to you than you let on, isn't there?" "There's more to everyone," Harry deflected. "Now, are we playing Exploding Snap or not?" As they played games late into the night, celebrating their survival and newfound friendship, Harry realized something had fundamentally shifted. He'd abandoned his mission during the troll incident, prioritizing Hermione's safety over gathering intelligence or maintaining his cover. Worse, he'd used advanced magic publicly. He would need to report this to Grindelwald, who would undoubtedly be displeased. Yet Harry couldn't bring himself to regret his actions. Hermione was alive, and somehow, that mattered more than his mission parameters. The realization was both confusing and terrifying. The next morning, a note appeared beside Harry's breakfast plate: "I would appreciate a moment of your time after classes today. My office password is Chocolate Frog." Albus Dumbledore. Harry's pulse quickened. Had the headmaster recognized the dark magic he'd used against the troll? Or was this about something else entirely? Throughout the day, he prepared mentally for the encounter, strengthening his occlumency shields and rehearsing plausible explanations for his advanced abilities. When classes ended, he made his way to the stone gargoyle guarding Dumbledore's office. "Chocolate Frog," he said, and the gargoyle leapt aside, revealing a spiral staircase. At the top, a polished oak door stood open, and Dumbledore's voice called from within. "Come in, Harry." The circular office was extraordinary: silver instruments whirring on spindly tables, portraits of former headmasters snoozing in their frames, and a magnificent red-gold bird perched beside the desk. Behind it sat Albus Dumbledore, his silver beard shimmering in the afternoon light, blue eyes watching Harry over half-moon spectacles. "Thank you for coming," Dumbledore said pleasantly. "Please, sit down. Would you care for a lemon drop?" "No, thank you, sir," Harry replied, taking the offered chair while maintaining his mental shields. Up close, Dumbledore's magical presence was overwhelming, a steady, controlled power that made Harry understand why Grindelwald had considered him such a formidable opponent. "I wanted to discuss yesterday's incident with the troll," Dumbledore continued. "Most unusual for a first year to handle such a creature so effectively." Harry kept his expression neutral. "We were lucky, sir. Ron managed to knock it out with its own club." "Indeed, Mr. Weasley showed remarkable presence of mind. As did you, with your rather advanced spell selection." "So that was it." Harry prepared his cover story. "I've been reading ahead in defense against the dark arts. Professor Quirrell's lessons leave a lot to be desired." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Curiosity is a valuable trait, Harry. Though the conjunctivitis curse is typically not taught until fifth year. Quite impressive wand work for someone of your age." Harry allowed a careful measure of pride to show. "Thank you, sir. I've always found practical magic comes naturally to me." "Yes, I imagine you would," Dumbledore said cryptically. He opened a drawer and removed a small object. "However, that's not the only reason I asked you here today." He placed a familiar silver pocket watch on the desk, identical to the one Harry had received weeks ago. "This belonged to your father," Dumbledore said softly. "And to his father before him. I've been holding it in trust since James's death, intending to give it to you when you were older. Imagine my surprise when Professor McGonagall mentioned you already possessed it." Harry's mind raced. The watch he'd received, a plant. A test. "Someone sent it to me anonymously the first week of term," he said truthfully. The note said it was my grandfather's. Most curious. Dumbledore opened the watch in his hand, revealing an inscription Harry hadn't noticed in his own, to Fleamont Potter, may your time be well spent in service of the light. This is the genuine article. Which means someone has gone to considerable trouble to create a replica. Harry maintained his confused expression while inwardly cursing. Grindelwald's operative had made a critical error. Why would anyone do that? That, Harry, is precisely what concerns me. Dumbledore studied him intently. Has anything else unusual happened since your arrival at Hogwarts? Any unexpected gifts or strange encounters? No, sir, Harry lied smoothly. Just the usual, classes, making friends, avoiding Filch after curfew. Dumbledore smiled slightly at the last part. I see. Well, I shall keep your father's watch safe until we determine the nature of the replica. Unless. He hesitated. Harry, might I ask where you lived before coming to Hogwarts? The directness of the question surprised Harry. With my adoptive father, Henry Graff. He's quite private, we lived in a remote part of the Alps. Interesting. There's no record of any legal adoption in magical or muggle systems. He said the paperwork was handled privately, through goblin intermediaries, Harry improvised. He's not fond of bureaucracy. And before him? Your Hogwarts letter was addressed to the smallest bedroom, 4, Privet Drive, your aunt and uncle's home. Harry had prepared for this. I was left at a muggle orphanage as a toddler. My time with the Dursleys was brief, they abandoned me there after a few years. That's where my father found me. How curious that no record of this orphanage stay exists either, Dumbledore mused, his tone light but his eyes piercing. Harry sensed the conversation becoming dangerous. I was very young, sir. I don't remember much about that time. Dumbledore nodded slowly. Of course. He rose and crossed to a cabinet, retrieving a shallow stone basin carved with runes. Harry, do you know what a pensieve is? A device for viewing memories, Harry answered automatically, then realized his mistake, first years wouldn't know this. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. Quite right. This particular pensieve contains something I think might interest you. He placed his wand to his temple and drew out a silvery strand, depositing it in the basin. A memory of your mother. Harry's heart skipped. This was unexpected, and potentially dangerous. Was it a trick to lower his guard? But his genuine curiosity about his parents outweighed caution. May I see it? He asked, hating how young his voice suddenly sounded. That was my intention in showing you, Dumbledore said kindly. Simply look into the basin. Harry leaned forward, and the office dissolved around him as he fell into the memory. He found himself in this same office, but years earlier. A young woman with dark red hair and startlingly familiar green eyes sat across from a younger Dumbledore. You're certain about this, Lily? Memory Dumbledore asked. It's dangerous work, especially now. I've never been more certain of anything, Lily Potter replied firmly. James feels the same. Voldemort's ideology is poison, Albus. The idea that magical blood makes anyone superior, it's exactly what's tearing our world apart. We want HQRY to grow up in a world where it doesn't matter who your parents are. Even knowing the prophecy. The danger it places on your family. Lily's expression hardened. Especially because of that. If Voldemort targets Harry because of some prophecy, all the more reason to fight what he stands for. The memory shifted, showing Lily and James Potter standing with several others, including a younger Professor McGonagall and a man who looked remarkably like Neville. The Order of the Phoenix stands against not just Voldemort himself, James was saying passionately, but the ideology of magical supremacy that allows dark wizards like him to gain followers. Blood status means nothing compared to the choices we make and the courage in our hearts. The memory dissolved, and Harry found himself back in Dumbledore's office, shaken to his core. His parents' own words, their own convictions, laid bare, and they stood in direct opposition to everything Grindelwald had taught him about magical superiority. "Thank you for sharing that," Harry managed, struggling to keep his voice steady. Dumbledore watched him closely. "Your parents were remarkable people, Harry. They died not just to protect you, but to protect an ideal, that all magical people deserve respect and freedom, regardless of their heritage." Harry nodded, not trusting himself to speak. His entire worldview was crumbling, and he couldn't afford to show it. "I have many more memories of them, should you ever wish to see more," Dumbledore offered. "Though I confess I'm curious about something, this adoptive father of yours. What values has he instilled in you regarding Muggleborns and magical heritage?" The question was a trap, elegantly laid. If Harry espoused Grindelwald's views, he'd contradict what he'd just seen of his parents. If he claimed more inclusive beliefs, he risked Dumbledore probing deeper into the disconnect. "He taught me to judge people by their actions and abilities, not their background," Harry said carefully. "That power comes with responsibility." "Wise advice," Dumbledore nodded. "And your own thoughts on the matter?" Harry hesitated, genuinely uncertain now. "I'm still learning about the wizarding world. Seeing different perspectives." Dumbledore seemed to accept this. A commendable approach. Learning to think for oneself is perhaps the most valuable education Hogwarts offers. He glanced at an intricate clock. "I've kept you long enough. You'll be wanting dinner." As Harry rose to leave, Dumbledore added, "One last thing, Harry. If you ever wish to discuss your parents or anything troubling you, my door is open. The password changes, but chocolate-themed sweets are a reliable guess." "Thank you, Professor," Harry said, reaching the door before Dumbledore called once more. "Oh, and Harry. That watch you received, I would suggest caution with anonymous gifts. Not all who take an interest in you have your best interests at heart." Harry nodded and escaped, his mind in turmoil. Outside, he leaned against the corridor wall, breathing heavily. Dumbledore suspected something, not the whole truth, perhaps, but enough to be concerned. More disturbingly, the memory had confirmed his growing doubts about Grindelwald's narrative. His parents hadn't been fighting for magical dominance. They'd died opposing everything Grindelwald stood for. That night, Harry sat on his bed long after his roommates fell asleep, staring at the enchanted journal. How could he report this meeting to Grindelwald? The Dark Wizard had systematically misled him about his parents' beliefs and allegiances. What else had he lied about? After hours of internal debate, he wrote a heavily edited account, "Meeting with Dumbledore today. He noted my advanced spellwork against the troll. Showed me memories of my parents in the Order of the Phoenix. Suspects something unusual about my upbringing but has no concrete evidence. Will be watching more closely. Need guidance on maintaining cover." Grindelwald's reply came quickly, concerning development. "Dumbledore is probing for weaknesses in your narrative. Maintain distance but not suspicion. If pressed about parents, acknowledge their order membership but suggest they joined primarily to oppose Voldemort's methods, not ideology. Minimize future displays of advanced magic. You may need to accelerate primary mission objectives before Dumbledore restricts your movements." Harry closed the journal without responding, troubled by how easily Grindelwald pivoted his narrative. Now his parents had opposed Voldemort's methods but not ideology. The convenient adjustment only deepened Harry's doubts. For the first time since arriving at Hogwarts, he didn't immediately follow Grindelwald's instructions. Instead, he pulled out the photo album of his parents and studied their faces, looking for truth in their frozen smiles. As November's chill settled over the castle, Harry found himself torn between his assigned mission and his growing attachments at Hogwarts. His midnight explorations continued, mapping the castle's defenses and investigating the third-floor corridor, but his heart wasn't fully committed anymore. During one Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Slytherin, Harry's attention was divided between the game and Professor Quirrell, whose suspicious behavior had increased recently. Midway through the match, Harry's broom began bucking violently, nearly throwing him from the stands. Harry. Hermione grabbed his arm, stabilizing him. Are you okay? Fine, he muttered, his gaze snapping to the teacher's section where both Quirrell and Snape were staring in his direction, lips moving in what could be counteracting spells, or curses. Ron frowned. You went pale as a ghost there for a second. Just dizzy, Harry lied, making a mental note to report the incident to Grindelwald. His scar had flared painfully during the episode, the same sensation he'd experienced when making eye contact with Snape at the welcoming feast. Later that week, Harry used his invisibility cloak to follow Quirrell after curfew. The professor moved with uncharacteristic purpose, his usual stutter absent as he muttered to himself. Outside the third-floor corridor, Quirrell met briefly with Snape, their hushed argument reaching Harry's ears. You don't want me as your enemy, Quirrell, Snape threatened. I don't know what you mean, Quirrell stammered, his nervousness apparently returning. You know perfectly well what I mean. Your little Halloween diversion didn't work. Now, wait for Halloween to pass, we'll have another chat when you've decided where your loyalties lie. The professors separated, with Snape stalking away while Quirrell remained, his expression hardening once alone. To Harry's shock, the defense professor spoke clearly, without any stutter, soon, master. Soon we will have it. Harry froze. Who was Quirrell addressing? There was no one else in the corridor. Unsettled, he backed away carefully, then sprinted silently to the Gryffindor Tower. In his journal that night, Harry reported, Quirrell definitely targeting whatever's hidden in third-floor corridor. Speaks without stutter when alone, refers to unseen master. Snape appears to suspect him. Artifact likely highly valuable, Cerberus, Devil's Snare, and flying keys identified as initial protections. Will continue investigation. Grindelwald's response was immediate and urgent, this confirms our suspicions. The object is almost certainly the Philosopher's Stone, created by Nicholas Flamel, grants immortality and unlimited gold. If Quirrell seeks it for a master, we must consider Voldemort's involvement. Critical, you must secure the stone before either Quirrell or Dumbledore moves it. Accelerate timeline immediately. Harry stared at the instructions, conflicted. Stealing the Philosopher's Stone would mean betraying the growing trust of his friends and professors. Yet failing Grindelwald was unthinkable after everything the Dark Wizard had done for him, raising him, training him, giving him purpose. But had Grindelwald truly done those things for Harry's benefit? Or had Harry simply been a tool, a weapon aimed at Dumbledore and shaped by lies about his parents' beliefs? The questions haunted him through troubled dreams. December arrived with snow and preparations for Christmas. As students discussed holiday plans, Harry received another message from Grindelwald, remain at Hogwarts for holidays. Castle will be minimally staffed, ideal opportunity to secure primary objective. I will not be at our arranged meeting point due to complications with certain European authorities. Proceed independently. The instruction to stay at Hogwarts was expected, but Grindelwald's unavailability was not. In the months since Harry's arrival at school, they'd planned to meet during the holidays to discuss progress in person. What complications had arisen? Was Grindelwald in danger? The thought was strangely distressing. When McGonagall collected names of students staying for Christmas, Ron approached Harry awkwardly. Mum asked if you'd like to come to our house for Christmas, he said. She says no one should be alone for the holidays. The invitation caught Harry completely off guard. Your mother invited me. She doesn't even know me. Ron's ears reddened. Well, I might have written home about you a few times. And, you know, you're Harry Potter. Thank you, Harry said, genuinely touched. But I need to stay here. There's research I want to do in the library. Research? During Christmas? Ron looked horrified. You're turning into Hermione. Harry laughed, but the moment stayed with him, the simple kindness of being included in someone's family holiday. Would Grindelwald have ever made such an offer? Somehow, he doubted it. As the castle emptied for holidays, Harry intensified his investigation of the third-floor corridor. Beyond the Cerberus, easily pacified with a charmed music box, he discovered a series of challenges clearly designed by different professors: Devil's Snare, Flying Keys, a giant chess set, a logic puzzle with potions, and finally, the Mirror of Erist. The mirror particularly fascinated him. According to his research, it showed the viewer's deepest desire, and Harry's reflection was troubling. He saw himself surrounded by his parents and friends, with no sign of Grindelwald or magical conquest. When he tried to push this vision aside and focus on finding the stone, his reflection smiled and placed it in his pocket, but no real stone appeared. Dumbledore had created the perfect protection, only someone who wanted to find the stone but not use it could obtain it from the mirror. Harry's conflicted desires made retrieval impossible. On Christmas morning, Harry was surprised to find presents at the foot of his bed. Hermione had given him a rare book on defensive magic, Ron's mother sent a hand-knitted sweater and homemade fudge, and even Neville had contributed chocolate frogs. The unexpected generosity from people who'd known him mere months contrasted sharply with Grindelwald's transactional relationship. The final package contained no note, but inside Harry found an invisibility cloak with a simple message: "Your father left this in my possession before he died. Use it well." Harry recognized Dumbledore's handwriting from his earlier note. Why would the headmaster give him something so valuable? Was it another test? Or a genuine gesture of connection to his parents? That night, wearing his new cloak, Harry wandered the castle aimlessly, his mind troubled. In an unused classroom, he discovered another surprise: the Mirror of Erist moved from its place in the stone's protection. As he gazed into it again, his reflection changed. Now he saw himself standing between two groups, Grindelwald on one side, his Hogwarts friends on the other. His parents stood apart, watching sadly. The reflection Harry looked torn, unable to move toward either group. "I see you've discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erist," came Dumbledore's voice from behind him. Harry spun around, heart racing. "Professor! I didn't hear you." "Few do," Dumbledore said mildly. "Curious how noiselessly one can move in thick woolen socks." He approached the mirror. "Do you understand what it shows us?" "Our deepest desire," Harry answered. "Whatever we want most." "Indeed. The happiest man alive would look in the mirror and see only himself, exactly as he is." Dumbledore studied Harry's face. "May I ask what you see?" Harry hesitated. "My family," he said, partly truthful. "My parents." "Understandable," Dumbledore nodded. "The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry. I ask you not to go looking for it again. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." As Harry turned to leave, Dumbledore added, "Harry, sometimes the greatest challenge is not choosing between right and wrong, but between two paths that seem right in different ways." The words followed Harry back to his dormitory, haunting him with their relevance. In January, as students returned from holidays, Harry's internal conflict intensified. Grindelwald's instructions grew more insistent: "Time is critical. Our intelligence suggests Quirrell will make his move before term ends. You must secure the stone first. Use whatever means necessary." Meanwhile, Harry's friendships deepened. He helped Neville stand up to Draco's bullying, assisted Hermione with organizing a study schedule for their upcoming exams, and taught Ron advanced chess strategies. Each interaction pulled him further from Grindelwald's influence and closer to the life his parents had envisioned for him. During one potions class, Snape paired Harry with Draco, clearly hoping for conflict. Instead, they worked with surprising efficiency, their potion turning out nearly perfect. "Not bad, Potter," Draco muttered as they cleaned up. "For someone raised by Muggles." "I wasn't raised by Muggles," Harry replied automatically. Draco raised an eyebrow. "That's not what everyone says. Dumbledore placed you with your Muggle relatives after your parents died." "Plans change," Harry said vaguely. "You know," Draco lowered his voice, "my father says there were many who would have taken you in. Pure-blood families who could have raised you properly, taught you our ways from the beginning. Harry met his gaze. And why didn't they? Dumbledore, Draco spat the name. He made sure no one could find you. Father says it was to control you, shape you into his perfect symbol. The words echoed Grindelwald's teachings uncomfortably. Maybe he was protecting me, Harry suggested, testing a different narrative. Voldemort's supporters were still free. Draco flinched at the name. Don't say it, Potter. And that's just Dumbledore's excuse. The real question is, who did raise you? Because whoever it was taught you magic far beyond first-year level. I've seen you in class, holding back. Harry's guard rose. What makes you say that? Please, Draco scoffed. The way you cast, the spells you know, my father trained me since I was 7, and even I recognize advanced technique. So, who was it? Which family took the famous Harry Potter? The question was dangerous. Draco's father had connections throughout the wizarding world. If he started investigating Harry's background seriously, Grindelwald's cover might unravel. I told you, I had an adoptive father, Harry said carefully. He's a private person. Private enough that no one in the wizarding world knows him. Draco pressed. That's not just private, Potter. That's suspicious. Their conversation was interrupted when Snape swept over to inspect their cauldron, but Draco's suspicious glance told Harry this wouldn't be the end of it. Another complication in his increasingly precarious position. As winter gave way to spring, Harry found himself spending more time in the library, not just researching the Philosopher's Stone but reading about the First Wizarding War, trying to understand his parents' true role and beliefs. Horrid, isn't it? Hermione said, finding him poring over accounts of Death Eater attacks. All that violence because some wizards thought having magical ancestors made them superior. Harry looked up, seeing an opportunity to test Grindelwald's worldview against others. But don't you think magical abilities should be valued? That wizard shouldn't have to hide from muggles. Hermione considered this seriously. Of course magical ability should be valued, but that's different from thinking some wizards are inherently better than others based on ancestry. As for hiding from muggles. She frowned thoughtfully. History shows what happens when powerful groups fear those who are different. The witch trials weren't that long ago, historically speaking. But wizards are more powerful, Harry pressed. Couldn't we protect ourselves now? At what cost? Hermione countered. Endless conflict. Magical superiority sounds like the same justification Muggle dictators use, we're better, so we should rule. That never ends well for anyone. Her words struck Harry deeply. Grindelwald's vision of wizard dominance over Muggles had always seemed logical when presented in isolation. But Hermione's comparison to Muggle dictators, Hitler, Stalin, those Grindelwald himself had manipulated during his rise to power, cast it in a troubling new light. Later that week, during a study session with Susan Bones, Harry cautiously asked about her aunt's experiences during the war. Aunt Amelia lost almost her entire family to Death Eaters, Susan said quietly. My grandparents, my Uncle Edgar and his family, all murdered because they opposed you-know-who's pure-blood agenda. I'm sorry, Harry said, genuinely moved. That's terrible. The worst part was how many supported him secretly, Susan continued. People in the ministry, old families who claimed to be respectable. They believed in magical superiority even if they pretended not to. She looked at Harry curiously. Why the interest in the war suddenly? Just trying to understand where I come from, Harry replied honestly. My parents died fighting Voldemort, but I know so little about what they actually believed. Susan squeezed his hand sympathetically. From what Aunt Amelia says, your parents were heroes who stood against prejudice when many wouldn't. You should be proud of them. That night, Harry stared at Grindelwald's journal for hours, unable to write his weekly report. Everything he was learning contradicted the worldview the Dark Wizard had instilled in him. If Grindelwald had lied about his parents' beliefs, about the fundamental justice of magical supremacy, what else had he misrepresented? Finally, he wrote a single question: if magical superiority is right, why did my parents die fighting for equality? The response came hours later, longer than usual: your parents were idealists, Harry. Brave but misguided. They opposed Voldemort's cruelty and methods, as any decent person would, but their alignment with Dumbledore clouded their understanding of the larger picture. Young people often embrace simplistic moral frameworks. Equality sounds noble until you examine its implications. Should powerful magic be constrained by the fears of those who can't comprehend it? Should wizards continue hiding when Muggles destroy their world through war and environmental devastation? Your parents chose what seemed kind, not what was necessary for our survival. Don't dishonor their sacrifice by failing to see beyond their limitations. Complete your mission. Secure the stone. Then we will discuss these philosophical matters in person. The response was eloquent, reasonable-sounding, and utterly unconvincing. Harry closed the journal without replying, a decision made in that moment of silence. April brought increased pressure from all sides. Exams approached, Quirrell's behavior grew more erratic, and Grindelwald's messages became almost threatening: your hesitation endangers everything we've worked for. The stone must be secured before Quirrell obtains it. Your loyalty seems to be wavering, Harry. Remember who raised you, who trained you, who gave you purpose when the world had abandoned you. Do not disappoint me. Meanwhile, Harry's friends had begun to notice his distraction. After one particularly poor performance in Charms, Hermione cornered him in the common room. Something's wrong, she stated flatly. You've been distant for weeks. Ron and I are worried. Harry sighed, the weight of his double life crushing him. I can't explain everything. Try, she insisted. We're your friends, Harry. Whatever it is, we want to help. The simple sincerity in her voice broke something in him. He'd spent months calculating every interaction, measuring every word, all while these people had offered genuine friendship expecting nothing in return. I haven't been honest about my background, he admitted, choosing words carefully. The person who raised me, he has plans for me that I'm not sure I believe in anymore. Hermione's eyes widened. What kind of plans? To continue his work. His vision for the wizarding world. Harry rubbed his scar absently. He took me after my parents died. Trained me. Prepared me for a role I didn't choose. Harry, Hermione said slowly, this person, was it someone my parents would have learned about in history books? The question surprised him. What makes you ask that? The advanced magic you know. Your understanding of international wizarding politics. The way you sometimes talk about Muggles when you forget yourself. She leaned forward. Harry, who raised you? The direct question hung between them. Harry considered lying again, but found he couldn't, not to her, not anymore. I can't tell you his name, he said finally. But yes, history books mention him. As someone, controversial. A dark wizard, Hermione whispered, connecting the dots. That's how you knew that curse to use against the troll. That's why you understand magic so intuitively. Her expression showed shock but, surprisingly, not fear. Does Dumbledore know? He suspects something's not right about my upbringing, but not the whole truth. Harry watched her carefully. Aren't you afraid? Knowing I was raised by someone, like that? Hermione considered this. I'm concerned, not afraid. You've had every opportunity to hurt people here, but instead, you've helped us. You saved me from the troll. You've been a good friend. She met his gaze steadily. Whatever you were raised to be, Harry, you're choosing something different. Her words struck him like a physical force. You're choosing something different. Was he? Could he? There's more, he said, the dam breaking. The third-floor corridor. It's hiding the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell is trying to steal it for someone he calls Master, probably Voldemort. And my guardian wants me to get it first. The Philosopher's Stone. Hermione gasped. But that's immortality. Unlimited gold. Yes. And you've been trying to. I haven't decided what to do, Harry interrupted. That's the problem. I owe him everything, but I'm not sure I believe in what he wants anymore. Hermione was silent for a long moment. You don't owe loyalty to someone who lies to you, Harry. Even if they raised you. How do you know he lied? Because the Harry I know wouldn't be this conflicted if he hadn't discovered something that contradicted what he was taught. She took his hand. Whatever you decide, Ron and I will help you. But I think you already know what's right. As she left him to his thoughts, Harry felt both lighter and heavier. Sharing even part of the truth had been liberating, but now he faced an impossible choice: betray Grindelwald, who had raised him, or betray his new friends and his parents' legacy. That night, Harry dreamed of the mirror again, but this time, instead of showing him his desires, it reflected only his own face, waiting for him to choose. May brought warm weather and increasing tension. Quirrell looked worse each day, gaunt and twitchy, his turban seeming to sit askew more often. Harry observed him closely, noting how the professor often vanished for hours only to reappear looking exhausted. During one defense against the dark arts lesson, Harry's scar erupted in pain when Quirrell turned his back to write on the blackboard. The sensation was so intense he nearly cried out. You all right? Ron whispered beside him. Harry nodded tightly, but the incident confirmed his growing suspicion: whatever caused his scar to react was connected to Quirrell, not just Snape as he'd first thought. That evening, he met Ron and Hermione by the lake, away from prying ears. Since his partial confession to Hermione, he'd gradually shared more with both of them, never revealing Grindelwald's identity but explaining enough about the stone and Quirrell's suspicious behavior that they understood the stakes. I think Quirrell will make his move soon, Harry said. He looks desperate. But Dumbledore's here, Ron pointed out. No one would try anything with him around. As if on cue, Professor McGonagall's voice echoed across the grounds, amplified magically. All students returned to their house common rooms immediately. All staff to the entrance hall. They exchanged alarmed glances. Something's happened, Hermione said as they hurried back to the castle. In the entrance hall, they glimpsed the teachers gathering. Dumbledore's expression was grave as he addressed them. The ministry has just summoned me to London on urgent business. I must depart immediately. Harry's blood ran cold. It's happening tonight, he whispered as they continued toward Gryffindor Tower. With Dumbledore gone, Quirrell will go after the stone. We should tell another teacher, Hermione urged. They won't believe us, Harry countered. We have no proof, and Quirrell's a professor. Ron looked between them anxiously. So what do we do? Harry took a deep breath, his decision crystallizing in that moment. We stop him ourselves. That night, as the castle slept, Harry, Ron, and Hermione slipped out of Gryffindor Tower under the invisibility cloak. They made their way to the third-floor corridor, finding the door already unlocked, confirmation that Quirrell had preceded them. Inside, the massive three-headed dog growled sleepily, a charmed harp playing beside it. Quirrell's already been through, Harry whispered. The harp will stop any minute. We need to move. They slipped through the trapdoor just as the music stopped and the dog stirred. Below, they landed on Devil's Snare, which Hermione quickly defeated with magical fire. The flying key room and chess set presented greater challenges, requiring Ron's strategic brilliance and Harry's flying skills. In the chess game, Ron sacrificed himself to secure their victory, suffering a concussion when the White Queen struck him down. Hermione stayed to help him while Harry continued alone through the potion riddle to the final chamber. There, as expected, stood Professor Quirrell before the mirror of Eriste, his turban removed to reveal a second face growing from the back of his head, inhuman, snake-like, with glowing red eyes. Potter, the face hissed. We meet again. Voldemort, Harry acknowledged, his wand raised. You're the master Quirrell serves. You're possessing him. Very astute, Voldemort's face twisted in what might have been a smile. More perceptive than Dumbledore, who suspected Severus while poor, stuttering Quirrell went unnoticed. "What do you want with the stone?" Harry asked, buying time while assessing the situation. "Isn't it obvious? To restore my body. To return to power." The red eyes studied him. "You could join me, Harry. Your parents died needlessly. I would have spared them if they hadn't resisted." "You're lying," Harry said firmly. "You murdered them because they stood against everything you represent." "And what do I represent, child?" Voldemort asked silkily. "Power? Ambition? The elevation of wizard kind? I've heard whispers about your upbringing, Harry Potter. Someone has trained you well, someone who understands the natural order of magic. Perhaps we're not so different after all." The word struck uncomfortably close to Harry's fears. Wasn't Grindelwald's vision of wizard dominance similar to Voldemort's? The methods different, perhaps, but the underlying belief the same. "I'm nothing like you," Harry declared, making his choice final. "My parents died protecting me, protecting a world where people are valued for who they are, not their blood status or power." Quirrell stepped toward him threateningly. "Enough talk. The boy knows something about the mirror, Master. He's been here before." "Use him," Voldemort commanded. "Make him retrieve the stone." Quirrell grabbed Harry's arm, forcing him before the mirror. "What do you see, Potter?" Harry gazed into the mirror, expecting to see his conflicted reflection from before. Instead, he saw himself standing tall, the stone in his pocket, while behind him stood his parents, nodding in approval. His reflection winked and patted its pocket, and Harry felt a sudden weight in his own. He had the stone. "Well?" Quirrell demanded. "What do you see?" "I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore," Harry lied. "I've won the House Cup." "He lies." Voldemort shrieked. "Seize him." Quirrell lunged, but the moment his hands touched Harry's skin, he howled in pain. His flesh blistered and smoked where it contacted Harry. "Master, I cannot touch him," he cried. "Then kill him, fool," Voldemort commanded. Quirrell raised his wand, but Harry was faster, years of Grindelwald's training taking over. He cast not a defensive spell but an offensive one, remembering how his scar reacted to Quirrell's presence. "Lumos Maxima," he shouted, channeling extraordinary power into the simple light charm. A blinding flash erupted from his wand, striking Quirrell directly in the face where Voldemort possessed him. The professor screamed, the sound inhuman and agonizing. Instinctively, Harry pressed his advantage, reaching out to touch Quirrell's face directly. The contact was excruciating for both of them, but Harry held on, feeling Quirrell's skin crumble beneath his fingers as Voldemort's parasitic presence reacted violently to whatever protection flowed through Harry's touch. "What magic is this?" Voldemort shrieked as Quirrell collapsed. "Love," Harry gasped, recalling Dumbledore's words about his mother's sacrifice. "Something you'll never understand." A wraith-like form tore itself from Quirrell's disintegrating body, howling in rage. The spectral Voldemort rushed at Harry, passing through his body like ice water before fleeing through the wall. Harry collapsed beside Quirrell's remains, the stone clutched in his hand, his scar burning like fire. As consciousness faded, he heard distant voices calling his name. His last thought before darkness claimed him, "I've chosen my side." Harry woke in the hospital wing, sunlight streaming through high windows. Dumbledore sat beside his bed, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Good morning, Harry," the headmaster said pleasantly. "You've had quite an adventure." Harry blinked, memories flooding back. "The stone, safe," Dumbledore assured him. "As are Miss Granger and Mr. Weasley, though they were quite concerned about you." Harry nodded, relief washing over him. "Professor Quirrell did not survive, I'm afraid. Voldemort abandoned him to die when your mother's protection proved too strong." "My mother's protection?" Dumbledore smiled gently. Love, Harry. Your mother died to save you, and that kind of sacrifice leaves a mark, not a visible one, but a protection in your very skin. Voldemort, consumed by hatred, cannot touch someone marked by something so good. Harry absorbed this, thinking of Grindelwald's dismissal of love as weakness. Yet it had defeated the greatest dark wizard of the age. The stone, he asked finally. Will be destroyed, Dumbledore said. Nicholas and I agree it's for the best. But Flamel will die. He has enough elixir to set his affairs in order. To one as old as Nicholas, death is but the next great adventure. Dumbledore studied Harry carefully. You faced a terrible choice in that chamber, Harry. You could have given Voldemort the stone, or kept it for yourself, or for someone else who might have asked it of you. Harry met his gaze. I couldn't let Voldemort return. Not after what he did to my parents, to so many others. Indeed. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. Harry, I find myself curious about something. When you looked in the mirror of Eriste, what did you truly see? Harry hesitated. I saw myself with the stone, and my parents behind me, approving of my choice. Fascinating, Dumbledore murmured. The mirror shows us our deepest desires, yet yours was not to use the stone but to honor your parents' legacy. His eyes twinkled. Perhaps, Harry, you've discovered something about yourself this year that goes beyond what anyone, including your mysterious guardian, may have intended. Harry tensed at the reference. Sir. We need not discuss it now, Dumbledore said kindly. But know this, Harry, our choices define us far more than our abilities or our upbringing. Whatever influences shaped your early years, you have begun to make choices that are entirely your own. The words resonated deeply. Professor, Harry said slowly, if someone was raised to believe certain things, about magical superiority, about muggles, but started questioning those beliefs, is it possible to change? To choose differently? Dumbledore's expression softened. Not only possible, Harry, but the most important growth one can experience. Recognizing the flaws in our foundational beliefs takes extraordinary courage, more, perhaps, than facing Voldemort himself. He stood, placing a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. Rest now. We can speak more when you're recovered. After Dumbledore left, Harry lay back, mind racing. On his bedside table sat the enchanted journal, placed there with his other possessions. It glowed faintly, indicating unread messages. With trembling hands, Harry opened it to find a series of increasingly urgent notes from Grindelwald. Report status immediately. Has Quirrell made his move? Harry, respond. Sources indicate Dumbledore has left Hogwarts. The stone is vulnerable. Your silence is concerning. If you've obtained the stone, acknowledge immediately. The final message, dated that morning, was different in tone. I know you're in the hospital wing. I know you faced Voldemort and survived again. I know you had the stone in your possession and surrendered it to Dumbledore. After everything I've done for you, the years of training, protection, guidance, this betrayal is how you repay me. We will discuss your failure when term ends. Do not ignore me again. Harry stared at the words, feeling a complex mix of emotions, guilt, fear, but most prominently, resolution. He'd made his choice in that chamber, not just about the stone but about his future path. With firm purpose, he wrote his final message to the man who had raised him. I know the truth about my parents. About what they fought for. About what you lied about. I won't be returning. I've chosen my own path. He closed the journal, feeling both terrified and liberated. The confrontation with Grindelwald would come eventually. The Dark Wizard wouldn't abandon his investment easily, but Harry would face that day on his own terms, not as a weapon or heir, but as his parents' son. When Ron and Hermione visited later, their concern and friendship further cemented his decision. As they discussed the adventure and their narrow escape, Harry felt a sense of belonging he'd never experienced in Grindelwald's isolated fortress. What will you do this summer? Hermione asked tentatively, aware now of Harry's complicated situation. Harry smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. Dumbledore's arranging something. He says I have choices now. You could come to my house, Ron offered immediately. Mum would love it. Maybe later in the summer, Harry said, touched by the offer. First, I need to learn who I really am, without anyone else's expectations. As his friends left, promising to return with homework and chocolate frogs, Harry gazed out the window toward the sunlit grounds of Hogwarts. For the first time in his life, the future felt like a horizon of possibilities rather than a predetermined path. He had played both sides and finally chosen his own. Chapter 3, Breaking Chains. Harry stared at the small, worn journal in his hands. 3 weeks had passed since he'd sent his final message to Grindelwald, and the Dark Wizard's response had been immediate and chilling. You cannot escape what you are, Harry. I made you. Everything you know, every spell you cast, every strategic thought in your mind, my creation. Run to Dumbledore if you must, but remember, he will use you just as effectively, only with prettier words about the greater good. I will see you soon, my heir. Sooner than you think. The threat lingered in Harry's mind as he sat in the Hogwarts Express compartment, watching the Scottish countryside blur past. End of term had arrived with surprising speed. Gryffindor had won the House Cup after Dumbledore awarded last-minute points for their adventure with the stone. Exams had been completed, Harry scoring top marks alongside Hermione. Hospital wing discharge papers had been signed. And now, the question of summer loomed. You're sure Dumbledore sorted everything? Ron asked, unwrapping his 5th chocolate frog of the journey. You're not going back to him? Harry shook his head. Dumbledore's arranged protection. He wouldn't tell me details, said it's safer if fewer people know. That's reasonable, Hermione said from behind her book. If your guardian is as dangerous as you've implied, secrecy is essential. Harry nodded, though dangerous hardly captured Grindelwald's threat level. The most powerful dark wizard before Voldemort, architect of magical terror across Europe, master of the Elder Wand, and the man who had shaped Harry's every thought for a decade. Will you be able to write? Ron asked. Eventually, Harry said. Once I'm settled. Dumbledore says normal outpost isn't secure enough at first. The concern on his friends' faces warmed something in Harry's chest. Their worry was genuine, not calculated, a concept still novel after years of Grindelwald's strategic relationships. As they neared London, Harry found himself imagining Grindelwald's reaction to his defection. The Dark Wizard wouldn't accept defeat easily. Harry had been more than a student, he'd been an investment, a weapon pointed at Dumbledore, a vehicle for Grindelwald's resurgence. 11 years of meticulous preparation abandoned. Harry. Hermione's voice broke through his thoughts. We're nearly there. She looked worried, and Harry realized his hand had been unconsciously tracing his lightning scar. He dropped it quickly. Sorry. Just thinking. About him? She asked softly. Harry nodded. He won't give up easily. I know how he thinks. But Dumbledore is powerful, yes. But so is my former guardian. Harry chose his words carefully, still avoiding naming Grindelwald directly. And he's patient. He spent decades planning his first rise to power. Ron leaned forward. You make him sound like you know who. Different methods, similar ambitions, Harry replied grimly. The train began slowing as they approached platform 9 3/4. Harry gathered his belongings, heart pounding with equal parts anticipation and dread. Who would meet him? Where would he go? And was it truly possible to escape Grindelwald's influence when it permeated his every skill and instinct? As they stepped onto the crowded platform, Harry spotted a familiar figure, tall, silver-bearded, drawing curious glances in his flamboyant purple suit. Dumbledore himself, Ron whispered, impressed. He must be taking your situation seriously. Harry nodded, suddenly struck by the contrast between his two mentors. Where Grindelwald had been secretive, Dumbledore stood openly, seemingly unconcerned about being recognized. Where Grindelwald had taught control and calculation, Dumbledore radiated calm assurance. "I should go," Harry said, turning to his friends. "Have good summers, both of you." Hermione surprised him with a fierce hug. "Be careful, Harry. Write when you can." "Yeah, mate," Ron added, clapping his shoulder. "Don't do anything stupid without us." Harry smiled, a genuine expression that still felt slightly foreign on his face. "I'll try." He approached Dumbledore, who greeted him with twinkling eyes. "Ah, Harry. Excellent timing. Are you ready for our little adventure?" "Yes, Professor," Harry replied, glancing around cautiously. "Though standing in the open seems risky." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Sometimes, Harry, the most effective hiding place is in plain sight. Few would expect me to personally escort you from the train." He offered his arm. "If you would hold on, please. We'll be operating." Harry hesitated. Side-along apparition. "With my trunk?" "I find that with sufficient determination, magical transportation limitations become surprisingly flexible," Dumbledore said cheerfully. "Now, this might feel rather uncomfortable for a first-timer." Harry gripped the offered arm, and the world compressed violently around him. The sensation was familiar. Grindelwald had occasionally transported him similarly, but Dumbledore's magic felt different, warmer somehow. They materialized on a quiet country lane bordered by high hedgerows. In the distance, a small village nestled in a valley, its church steeple rising above thatched roofs. "Welcome to Godric's Hollow," Dumbledore said softly. Harry stared, understanding dawning. "My parents lived and died here, yes." Dumbledore began walking toward the village. "I thought you might appreciate beginning your summer here, connecting with your roots before we establish your more permanent arrangements." They walked in silence, Harry absorbing the surroundings with new eyes. This wasn't how Grindelwald had described the village in his memories. Where the dark wizard had seen strategic vulnerability and magical waste, Harry saw a peaceful community where wizards and muggles coexisted unknowingly. "Are we going to their house?" Harry asked finally. Dumbledore shook his head. "Not immediately. I thought we might visit the cemetery first. Then perhaps a cup of tea with an old friend who lives nearby, someone who knew your parents well." The village square contained a war memorial that shimmered, transforming into a statue of the Potter family as they approached. Harry stared at the stone representation of his parents, holding an infant version of himself. The artist had captured his mother's kindness and his father's proud stance. "This is how they're remembered," Dumbledore said gently. "As heroes who stood against darkness, who gave their lives not just for you, but for the principles they believed in." Harry swallowed hard. "Grindelwald told me they died fighting for magical freedom." He wasn't entirely wrong, just about what kind of freedom they wanted. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly at the name, but he didn't comment on it directly. "Indeed. They believed in freedom from fear, from prejudice, from the sort of ideology that elevates one group over another." The cemetery lay behind a small church. They walked between ancient graves until reaching a white marble headstone. Upon it were inscribed the names James and Lily Potter, along with the dates of their births and deaths, and a simple epitaph: "The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death." Harry knelt, touching the cold stone. "What does that mean?" The inscription. "Living beyond death," Dumbledore explained. "Not immortality as Voldemort seeks it, but the idea that love and sacrifice transcend physical death." "He never told me about their grave," Harry said quietly. In 11 years, he never once suggested visiting them. "Perhaps because graves make mortality real," Dumbledore suggested. "Those who fear death avoid its reminders." They stood in silence for several minutes before Dumbledore spoke again. "Harry, I believe it's time for honesty between us. You've lived 11 years with Gellert Grindelwald, a fact I suspected since your first week at Hogwarts but confirmed only recently. Harry looked up sharply. How did you know? The watch, Dumbledore said simply. An elegant test, but revealing. Only Gellert would know enough about the Potter family to create such a convincing replica, yet missed the inscription known only to close family friends. His blue eyes held Harry's gaze. He trained you as his successor, didn't he? His second chance at magical revolution. Harry nodded, relieved to finally speak openly. He saw potential in me the night my parents died. He took me before anyone else arrived at the house. And raised you with his ideology, his methods, his vision. Dumbledore sighed heavily. I blame myself, Harry. I placed protection around your aunt's home, never imagining someone had already taken you. You couldn't have known, Harry said, surprising himself by comforting the headmaster. Dumbledore smiled sadly. I should have been more vigilant. Gellert was always brilliant at exploiting oversights. He gestured toward the village. Shall we continue our conversation over tea? I believe you'll find our host most illuminating. They walked to a small cottage on the village outskirts. Dumbledore knocked 3 times, and the door was opened by a man with shabby robes and prematurely graying hair. Albus, the man greeted, then froze as his gaze fell on Harry. Is that? Harry, may I introduce Remus Lupin, one of your father's closest friends, Dumbledore said. Remus, yes, this is Harry Potter. Lupin's face showed a complex mix of emotions, joy, grief, wonder. You look so like James, he said hoarsely. But your eyes, my mother's, Harry finished, having heard this from several teachers. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Lupin. Remus, please. He stepped back from the doorway. Come in, both of you. I'll put the kettle on. The cottage interior was modest but comfortable, filled with books and well-worn furniture. As Lupin prepared tea in the small kitchen, Harry examined photographs on the mantelpiece, his father as a teenager, arms slung around a younger Lupin and 2 other boys. Your father's closest friends, Dumbledore explained. They called themselves the Marauders. Remus Lupin, Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, and James Potter, inseparable at Hogwarts. Harry studied the laughing faces. What happened to them? Besides my father, I mean. Dumbledore's expression darkened. A tragic story for another time, perhaps. Lupin returned with a tea tray, his hands shaking slightly as he poured. I still can't believe you're here, Harry. We all thought, he stopped, glancing at Dumbledore. Remus knows the truth, Dumbledore said to Harry. About who raised you. He's agreed to help with your summer arrangements. Harry's eyebrows rose. You're going to stay with me? For part of the time, Lupin confirmed. Along with other protective measures Albus has arranged. He studied Harry's face. I imagine you have questions about your parents. Real answers, not whatever Grindelwald told you. Harry hesitated, then asked what he'd wondered for months, were they really opposed to everything he stands for? The separation from Muggles, wizard superiority, all of it. Completely, Lupin said firmly. Lily was Muggle-born, and she never forgot her roots. James came from an old wizarding family but rejected pure-blood elitism entirely. They both believed magical and Muggle worlds were better together, with mutual respect. They founded a charitable organization, Dumbledore added, specifically to promote cooperation between magical and non-magical communities. Quite revolutionary, actually, funding magical solutions for Muggle problems like disease and poverty, but applied ethically, with consent. Harry absorbed this, feeling a growing certainty in his chest. That's why Voldemort targeted them, isn't it? Not just the prophecy, but because they actively opposed his ideology. They were threats in multiple ways, Lupin confirmed. Powerful, popular, and promoting ideas that undermined the pure-blood agenda. His eyes held Harry's. They would be immensely proud of you, Harry. Defying Grindelwald couldn't have been easy after he raised you. I'm still using what he taught me, Harry admitted. The magic, the strategy, the instincts, I can't just erase 11 years of training. Nor should you, Dumbledore said surprisingly. Knowledge itself is neither good nor evil, it's how we apply it that matters. Gellert taught you powerful skills, now you can choose to use them for purposes he never intended. The conversation continued late into the evening, with Lupin sharing stories of Harry's parents, their school days, their wedding, their defiance of Voldemort, their love for their infant son. Each anecdote filled gaps in Harry's understanding, replacing Grindelwald's clinical assessments with human truth. As night fell, Dumbledore rose. I must return to Hogwarts briefly. Remus, perhaps you could show Harry to the cottage I've prepared? Lupin nodded. Of course. It's ready with all the protections we discussed. Once Dumbledore had departed, Lupin led Harry along a moonlit path to another cottage at the edge of the village. Though small, it was well warded. Harry could feel the protective magic humming in the air. This will be your home for the next few weeks, Lupin explained, lighting lamps with his wand. I'll stay in the spare room. Various Order members will rotate protective duties. The Order. The Order of the Phoenix, Dumbledore's organization against Voldemort. Many of us remained connected, even after his fall. Lupin showed Harry to a comfortable bedroom. This was originally your parents' weekend cottage, though it's been heavily modified with protective enchantments now. Harry set down his trunk, emotions overwhelming him. I'm sleeping in their house. Lupin smiled gently. Dumbledore thought you might appreciate the connection. He hesitated. Harry, I know this is overwhelming, learning about your parents, processing who they really were against what Grindelwald told you, preparing for whatever comes next. If you need space, or time, or just someone to listen. Thank you, Harry said sincerely. Right now, I think I just need to sleep. After Lupin left, Harry sat on the bed, processing the day's revelations. He was in his parents' home, surrounded by their possessions, breathing the same air they once had. After years in Grindelwald's austere fortress, the cottage's warm simplicity felt both foreign and right. He fell asleep wondering what his life might have been if Grindelwald had never found him that Halloween night. Harry's summer developed a rhythm unlike anything he'd experienced before. Mornings with Lupin included defensive magic training, not that you need much help there, Lupin had commented after witnessing Harry's skills, and stories about the Marauders' Hogwarts adventures. Afternoons often brought different Order members, Kingsley Shacklebolt, an imposing Auror who taught Harry about magical law enforcement, Emmeline Vance, who shared her expertise in healing magic, and occasionally, Professor McGonagall, who helped Harry understand transfiguration theory beyond Grindelwald's combat applications. In the evenings, Harry explored his parents' possessions, photo albums, journals, letters, building a more complete picture of who they'd been. He discovered his father's surprisingly sophisticated research on transfiguration and his mother's groundbreaking work combining charms with potions. They hadn't just been soldiers against Voldemort but innovative magical thinkers. 2 weeks into this arrangement, Dumbledore returned with news. Harry, I believe it's time for the second phase of our summer plan, he announced over dinner. While this location remains secure, diversifying your protection seems prudent. You think Grindelwald is getting closer? Harry asked. Dumbledore nodded gravely. My sources indicate movement among his old supporters in Eastern Europe. Additionally, there are other concerning developments. Voldemort, Harry guessed. Indeed. Professor Quirrell's body was found, but there was no trace of Voldemort's spirit. He is undoubtedly seeking another host, another path to restoration. Dumbledore sipped his tea thoughtfully. You, Harry, represent a unique threat to both Grindelwald and Voldemort. You've defied them both, and neither tolerates defiance. So what's the plan? Harry asked, automatically shifting to the strategic mindset Grindelwald had instilled. The Weasley family has agreed to host you for the remainder of summer. Their home, while modest, contains ancient protective magic, recently reinforced. Between the borough's defenses and the family's proven loyalty, you'll be well protected while experiencing something I suspect you've never had. What's that? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. A normal family summer. 2 days later, Arthur Weasley arrived to escort Harry to the burrow. The gangly, red-haired man examined the cottage's electrical fixtures with childlike fascination while Harry packed. Extraordinary, the way muggles compensate for lack of magic, he marveled, flipping a light switch repeatedly. Ingenious, really. Harry found Mr. Weasley's enthusiasm both baffling and endearing. Grindelwald had dismissed Muggle technology as primitive desperation, seeing an adult wizard genuinely impressed by it challenged yet another aspect of his upbringing. They traveled by flow powder, something Harry had read about but never experienced. The dizzying journey through fireplaces ended with Harry stumbling into the Weasleys' cluttered, cozy kitchen, where Mrs. Weasley immediately enveloped him in a bone-crushing hug. "Harry, dear. We're so delighted to have you." She held him at arm's length, assessing him critically. "Much too thin, of course. We'll fix that right up." Ron appeared in the doorway, grinning. "Told you Mum would try to fatten you up first thing. Come on, you're sharing my room." The burrow was unlike anywhere Harry had ever been, a magical home clearly built with love rather than grandeur. Where Grindelwald's fortress had featured strategic design and ancient artifacts, the Weasleys' home burst with personality, from the self-washing dishes to the family clock showing everyone's whereabouts. That evening, seated at the crowded dinner table with Ron, Ginny, who blushed furiously whenever Harry looked her way, the twins, Percy, and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, Harry experienced his first family meal. The casual affection, good-natured teasing, and genuine warmth overwhelmed him. "Everything all right, dear?" Mrs. Weasley asked, noticing his silence. "Yes," Harry said quickly. "It's just, different from what I'm used to." "Dumbledore mentioned your guardian was rather strict," she said diplomatically. Harry nearly choked at the understatement. "You could say that." "Well, you're with us now," she said firmly, serving him a third helping of treacle tart. "And the burrow may not be fancy, but it's brilliant," Harry interrupted sincerely. "Really? Thank you for having me." Later, in Ron's violently orange Chudley Cannons-themed bedroom, Harry struggled to process the day's emotions. "Your family's amazing," he told Ron, who looked surprised by the intensity in Harry's voice. "They're all right," Ron shrugged. "Drive me mental sometimes, but yeah, they're good people." He hesitated. "Was it really bad? Living with that bloke who raised you?" Harry considered how to explain. "It wasn't cruel, exactly. He never beat me or starved me. But everything was training or lessons. No birthdays, no Christmas celebrations, no friends. Just preparation for the greater purpose." Ron looked horrified. "That's messed up, mate. No wonder you didn't know how to just be a kid when you got to Hogwarts." Harry smiled wryly. "Was it that obvious?" "Obvious? You analyzed everyone like they were chess pieces. Took us months to convince you that helping with homework didn't mean we owed you some strategic favor." Harry winced, remembering his calculated approach to friendship. "Sorry about that." "Nah, not your fault," Ron said easily. "You didn't know better. Besides, you got there eventually." He punched Harry's shoulder lightly. "Though you're still a bit mental with the combat reflexes. Fred and George learned that the hard way when they tried to prank you." The next weeks at the burrow provided Harry with experiences he'd never imagined, degenoming the garden, playing pick-up Quidditch in the orchard, staying up late talking about nothing important. The Weasleys accepted him without reservation, treating his occasional odd behaviors, like automatically cataloging exits when entering rooms, with good-humored understanding. As August progressed, letters arrived from Hermione, who was vacationing in France with her parents but promised to meet them in Diagon Alley for school shopping. Harry responded carefully, using the secure communication method Dumbledore had arranged, a charmed parchment that transmitted messages through Fawkes the Phoenix. Despite the idyllic summer, Harry remained vigilant. Grindelwald's silence worried him more than threats would have. The dark wizard was patient, strategic, he wouldn't telegraph his moves. One morning, as Harry helped Mrs. Weasley with breakfast, an unfamiliar owl arrived with a small package addressed to him. Everyone froze. "Don't touch it," Mr. Weasley said sharply, drawing his wand. Unknown deliveries could be dangerous. He performed several detection spells while the family watched anxiously. Finally, he pronounced it free of obvious curses or tracking charms. Still, best to be cautious, he advised as Harry carefully unwrapped it. Inside lay a small silver box and a note in familiar handwriting. "Harry, you've chosen a difficult path, one that places you between powerful forces without the protection of either. Consider this a parting gift from your former mentor, insight into what approaches. Open the box alone. Remember your training, even as you reject its purpose." The note was unsigned, but Harry would recognize Grindelwald's precise script anywhere. The family watched him with concern. "Who's it from, mate?" Ron asked. "Him," Harry said simply. "My former guardian." Mrs. Weasley gasped. "Arthur, we should contact Dumbledore immediately." Mr. Weasley nodded, already moving toward the fireplace. "Don't open that box until he's examined it, Harry." But Harry knew Grindelwald wouldn't send anything so obviously dangerous. The gift wasn't a trap but a message, and postponing it wouldn't change its contents. "It's safe," he said, opening the silver box before anyone could stop him. Inside lay a small crystal vial containing a swirling silver memory, alongside a miniature pensieve no larger than a saucer, a rare magical artifact that Harry recognized from Grindelwald's collection. "Is that what I think it is?" Bill Weasley asked, having arrived for breakfast moments earlier. Harry nodded grimly. "He wants to show me something." Dumbledore arrived within the hour, his expression grave as he examined Grindelwald's gift. "Fascinating," he murmured. "A Voyager's pensieve, extremely rare, designed for portable memory viewing. Gellert always did have exquisite taste in magical artifacts." "Should I view it?" Harry asked. Dumbledore considered this. "Gellert wouldn't harm you physically, you're too valuable to his plans. But psychological manipulation is certainly possible." He sighed. "However, denying you the information he wishes to convey might be equally dangerous. I suggest we view it together." They retreated to Mr. Weasley's shed, where Dumbledore activated the miniature pensieve and poured in Grindelwald's memory. Together, they touched the silvery surface. The memory began in what Harry recognized as Malfoy Manor, though it appeared to be a recent scene rather than a historical one. Around an ornate table sat Lucius Malfoy, several hooded figures Harry didn't recognize, and a pale, skeletal man whose features made Harry's scar burn, not Voldemort in full form, but someone channeling his presence. "The Potter boy has become a complication," the Voldemort vessel spoke, his voice eerily layered as if multiple people spoke at once. "Quirrell's failure was disappointing but informative. The child has unexpected resources. My son reports that Potter displays advanced magical knowledge," Lucius offered. "Far beyond first-year curriculum." "Yes," the vessel hissed. "And now we know why. Our European friends confirm that Grindelwald claimed the boy after my temporary setback. Raised him as his protégé." The table erupted in murmurs of surprise and disbelief. Silence. The vessel raised a skeletal hand. "This presents both threat and opportunity. The boy has rejected Grindelwald's guidance and aligned with Dumbledore, but his training remains. He is neither light nor dark, but something between, potentially malleable." "You suggest recruiting Potter?" one hooded figure asked incredulously. "I suggest applying pressure precisely where his newfound loyalties are weakest." The vessel smiled terribly. "The boy has formed attachments, the Granger mud-blood, the Weasley blood traders. These connections are recent, untested. When forced to choose between his friends and his survival, we shall see how firm his convictions truly are." The memory shifted to a different scene, Grindelwald himself, looking older but still formidable, standing on a mountainside overlooking a village. "Harry," he spoke directly to the viewer. "By now, you've seen what Voldemort plans. My sources within his organization provided this intelligence at great cost. Consider it my final lesson to you. In rejecting me, you've placed yourself at the center of a war you don't fully understand." Grindelwald paced, his mismatched eyes intense. "Voldemort will target your friends, believing they are your weakness. Dumbledore will protect you but use you as a symbol in his own chess game. You alone must determine your path forward." He stopped, looking directly into the memory as if meeting Harry's eyes. "I raised you to rule, not to serve. Remember that, even as you forge your own destiny." The memory ended, returning Harry and Dumbledore to the shed. They stood in silence for several moments. "Well," Dumbledore said finally. "Gellert remains theatrical as ever." "Is it true?" Harry demanded. "About Voldemort targeting my friends?" Dumbledore's expression grew serious. "It aligns with our own intelligence. Tom Riddle, Voldemort, has always understood the power of emotional leverage." "Then I shouldn't go back to Hogwarts," Harry said immediately. "I'm putting everyone in danger." "On the contrary," Dumbledore countered, "Hogwarts remains the safest place for all of you. Its protections are ancient and powerful." He studied Harry thoughtfully. "What interests me more is Gellert's motive in sharing this information." Harry considered this. "He's showing me that neither side has my best interests at heart. That I need to forge my own path." He met Dumbledore's gaze. "Is he wrong about you using me as a symbol?" Dumbledore didn't flinch from the directness. "Not entirely. Your survival as an infant created a powerful symbol of hope. Your choices now could indeed inspire others." His blue eyes held Harry's. "But I hope you know that my concern for you extends beyond your symbolic value, Harry. I care about your well-being for its own sake." Harry nodded, not entirely convinced but appreciative of the honesty. "What do we do about Voldemort's plans?" "We prepare," Dumbledore said simply. "And perhaps, we consider the one insight in Gellert's message that rings undeniably true: you must determine your own path forward." The trip to Diagon Alley the following week was tightly controlled, with Order members disguised as ordinary shoppers providing surveillance. Harry reunited with Hermione at Flourish and Blots, where celebrity author Gilderoy Lockhart was signing copies of his autobiography. "Harry!" Hermione exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "How's your summer been? Have you been safe? I've been so worried." "I'm fine," Harry assured her. "Staying with Ron's family. It's been educational. He means Mum's been stuffing him with food and Dad's been interrogating him about how light switches work," Ron translated, rolling his eyes. Their conversation was interrupted when Lockhart spotted Harry and dragged him into a photo opportunity, announcing that he would be the new defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts. Harry extricated himself as quickly as possible, only to encounter Draco Malfoy and his father. "Famous Harry Potter," Draco sneered. "Can't even go into a bookshop without making the front page." "Leave him alone," Ginny Weasley piped up, surprising everyone with her boldness. "Look, Potter, you've got yourself a girlfriend." Draco laughed. Lucius Malfoy placed a hand on Draco's shoulder, his cold eyes assessing Harry with new interest. "Mr. Potter. At last we meet." Harry met his gaze steadily, remembering the elder Malfoy's presence in Grindelwald's memory. "Mr. Malfoy. Forgive my son's manners," Lucius said smoothly. "Your fame sometimes inspires overexcitement." He studied Harry with calculating eyes. "I understand you've had an unusual upbringing. How fascinating that must have been." The deliberate emphasis confirmed Harry's suspicion. Lucius knew about Grindelwald. "I've been fortunate to learn from various perspectives," Harry replied carefully. "Indeed." Lucius's lip curled. "One wonders which perspectives will ultimately prove most influential." The tense moment was broken when Mr. Weasley approached, initiating a heated exchange with Lucius that quickly escalated to a physical altercation. In the chaos, Harry noticed Lucius slipping something into Ginny's second-hand cauldron but couldn't intervene without revealing his heightened awareness. Later, as they finished their shopping, Harry pulled Ron and Hermione aside. "Malfoy's father put something in your sister's cauldron," he whispered. "I need to see what it was." Ron frowned. "Why would he? Because he's working with Voldemort," Harry said bluntly. "I have evidence. Whatever he planted, it's not good." They found Ginny outside the apothecary and Harry created a distraction while Hermione examined the cauldron's contents. She extracted an old, battered diary tucked between Ginny's second-hand books. "This doesn't belong with the standard book list," Hermione confirmed, showing them the blank journal. "And it feels strange." Harry didn't touch it, recognizing dark magic from his training with Grindelwald. "We need to give this to Dumbledore immediately." "It's just an old diary," Ron protested. "No," Harry said firmly. "It's saturated with dark magic. Powerful, malevolent magic." Hermione looked alarmed. "How can you tell?" "I just can," Harry said, avoiding details of his training in dark detection. "Trust me on this." They managed to slip away from the group long enough to have the diary secured in a magical containment bag Harry had brought as a precaution. That evening, back at the Burrow, Dumbledore himself arrived to collect it, confirming Harry's assessment. "Most perceptive, Harry," the headmaster said gravely. "This object contains extremely dangerous magic, a fragment of Voldemort himself, I believe. Had young Ginny used it, the consequences would have been devastating." "Is this how he's planning to return?" Harry asked. "One of several attempts, I suspect." Dumbledore pocketed the contained diary. "Your alertness may have prevented a terrible series of events at Hogwarts this year." As the headmaster left, Harry felt a bitter satisfaction. Grindelwald's training in dark magic detection had just protected his friends, a skill developed for domination now used for defense. Perhaps there was truth to Dumbledore's assertion that knowledge itself wasn't evil, only its application. September 1st arrived with the usual Weasley chaos. Despite leaving early, they barely made the Hogwarts Express, requiring a mad dash through King's Cross Station. Harry boarded with seconds to spare, finding a compartment with Ron, Hermione, and Neville. As the train pulled away, Harry felt the familiar mix of excitement and wariness that had characterized his first journey to Hogwarts. This time, however, he wasn't arriving as Grindelwald's spy but as himself, a second-year student with friends, with choices, with an emerging identity separate from his training. "Looking forward to classes?" Hermione asked, already thumbing through Standard Book of Spells, Grade 2. "Some more than others," Harry replied, thinking skeptically of Lockhart's peacock display in the bookshop. "I'm hoping for more practical defense lessons this year." "After Quirrell, anything would be an improvement," Ron added, unwrapping a chocolate frog. The compartment door slid open, revealing Draco Malfoy with Crabbe and Goyle flanking him. "Well, if it isn't Potter and his fan club," Draco drawled. "Father says this might be Hogwarts' last year as a respectable institution." With Dumbledore admitting all sorts, his gaze flicked to Hermione, standards are clearly slipping. Harry noticed something different in Draco's demeanor, a nervous edge beneath the bravado. "Did your father mention anything else, Draco? About plans for the school, perhaps?" Draco's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about, Potter." "No. Strange, considering what we found among our purchases after your father's little bookshop visit." Color drained from Draco's face. "I don't know anything about that." "Then why do you look so worried?" Harry pressed. Draco retreated, muttering something about blood traitors as he left. Once he'd gone, Hermione turned to Harry with concern. "That was different from your usual approach with Malfoy. Almost like you were interrogating him." Harry grimaced, recognizing Grindelwald's intelligence-gathering techniques in his own behavior. "Sorry." Old habits. Don't apologize, Ron said. That was brilliant. Did you see his face? It's not brilliant if Harry's falling back into patterns he's trying to break, Hermione countered softly. Her insight struck Harry deeply. She was right, he'd automatically shifted to manipulation tactics Grindelwald had taught him. The line between using his training and being controlled by it remained dangerously thin. I'll be more mindful, he promised. The rest of the journey passed pleasantly, with Harry making a conscious effort to simply enjoy his friend's company without strategic calculation. By the time they reached Hogsmeade Station, he felt more grounded in his developing identity, not rejecting his skills but choosing how to apply them. The welcome feast brought its usual splendor, though Harry noted increased security, more ghosts patrolling, teachers scanning the hall regularly. Dumbledore's welcome speech included pointed remarks about vigilance and unity. While we have avoided certain unpleasantness thanks to fortunate intervention, the headmaster said, briefly meeting Harry's eyes, we must remain alert to dangers both within and beyond our walls. The dormitory felt genuinely welcoming as Harry settled into his four-poster bed that night. Unlike last year, when he'd viewed Gryffindor Tower as merely his operational base, it now felt like home, a place where he belonged not through calculation but through genuine connection. Classes resumed with familiar rhythm, though Harry approached them differently. Rather than holding back to avoid suspicion, he now engaged fully, combining Grindelwald's advanced training with standard Hogwarts instruction to develop his own magical style. In Transfiguration, this meant applying Grindelwald's teachings about magical energy manipulation to McGonagall's precision-focused approach, creating transformations that were both powerful and elegantly controlled. In Charms, he integrated combat applications with Flitwick's artistic finesse, developing spells that were both effective and ethically applied. Even potions improved, as Harry applied Grindelwald's lessons about ingredient interactions without the Dark Wizard's emphasis on poisons and control agents. Snape remained coldly suspicious, but even he couldn't deny Harry's growing skill. Only defense against the dark arts proved disappointing. Lockhart's classes were theatrical farces focused on the professor's alleged achievements rather than practical magic. After a disastrous lesson involving Cornish pixies, Harry began organizing unofficial study sessions with friends. We'll teach ourselves, he announced to Ron and Hermione after another useless Lockhart lecture. I know enough to get us started with proper defensive magic. Word spread, and soon Harry found himself leading a small group in an unused classroom, demonstrating shield charms, disarming spells, and basic magical combat techniques. Where did you learn all this? Terry Boot asked after Harry helped him perfect a blocking spell most fourth years couldn't manage. My guardian was paranoid about self-defense, Harry replied, the partial truth coming easily now. The study group expanded to include students from all houses, even a few Slytherins, though never Draco or his immediate circle. Harry discovered he had a talent for teaching, for breaking down complex magical concepts into understandable components. You should consider teaching as a career, Hermione commented after watching him patiently guide Neville through a difficult counterjinx. You have a gift for it. Harry had never considered any future beyond Grindelwald's plans. The idea of choosing a career based on his own talents and interests felt novel and strangely liberating. As autumn progressed, Harry maintained vigilance against both Grindelwald and Voldemort's potential moves. He continued private defensive training with Professor Flitwick, who had offered advanced dueling lessons at Dumbledore's suggestion. These sessions allowed Harry to use his full capabilities without alarming classmates. Remarkable technique, Flitwick commented after one particularly intense practice. Your foundation in magical combat is unlike anything I've seen in a student. Almost reminiscent of the European dueling style popular in the 1920s. Harry tensed, recognizing the reference to Grindelwald's era of prominence. I've studied various approaches. Flitwick nodded thoughtfully. Styles are merely tools, Mr. Potter. What matters is the wizard wielding them. You use these techniques defensively, which speaks to your character more than their origin. The professor's acceptance helped Harry reconcile his training with his evolving identity. He needn't reject everything Grindelwald had taught him, only the purpose behind those lessons. October brought the first Hogsmeade weekend for third years and above. Though unable to participate, Harry used the quieter castle to explore areas he'd neglected in his previous mission-focused investigations. In the library's historical section, he discovered journals documenting the rise and fall of dark wizards throughout history. One slim volume particularly caught his attention, Grindelwald's Vision, Revolutionary or Tyrant? By Bathilda Bagshot. The book provided context he'd never received from Grindelwald himself, how the Dark Wizard's ideology had evolved from philosophical discussions with young Albus Dumbledore to increasingly extremist positions as his power grew. Most revealing was Bagshot's personal assessment as someone who had known Grindelwald in his youth. Gellert possessed extraordinary magical talent matched only by his capacity for self-deception. He genuinely believed his actions served a greater good, even as they caused tremendous suffering. This ability to rationalize cruelty as necessity made him more dangerous than those who embrace evil knowingly. Harry read late into the night, finding uncomfortable parallels with his own upbringing. How many times had Grindelwald justified harsh training or isolation as preparation for the greater purpose? How skillfully had the Dark Wizard cultivated Harry's talents while shaping his worldview through selective information and calculated exposure? The next morning, Harry sought out Dumbledore, finding the headmaster in his office examining what appeared to be the diary they'd intercepted from Ginny. "Harry," Dumbledore greeted him warmly. "What brings you here today?" Harry hesitated, then asked directly, "You knew Grindelwald before he became a Dark Wizard, didn't you?" "You were friends." Dumbledore's expression grew somber. "Yes, though I rarely discuss it." "How did you come to that conclusion?" "Bagshot's book mentioned it. And there were things Grindelwald said about you over the years, personal things beyond just political opposition." "I see." Dumbledore sighed deeply. "Yes, Gellert and I were briefly very close friends in our youth. We shared ideas, dreams, ambitions. For a short time, I was seduced by his vision of wizards guiding humanity, for the greater good." "What changed?" Harry asked. "Reality intruded on our theoretical paradise," Dumbledore said quietly. "A confrontation occurred, my brother objected to our plans, spells were cast, and my sister was killed in the crossfire. Gellert fled, and I was left to face the consequences of our arrogance." He removed his glasses, suddenly looking much older. "Gellert continued pursuing our shared vision, but without the moderating influence of compassion or remorse. By the time I finally confronted him in 1945, he had become the very embodiment of what we had once opposed, a tyrant using power to dominate rather than elevate." "He told me that story differently," Harry said. "He said you abandoned your shared vision because of personal tragedy, choosing sentiment over necessary progress." "A convenient interpretation," Dumbledore noted sadly. "Gellert always excelled at reshaping history to support his narrative." He studied Harry intently. "May I ask why you're exploring this history now?" Harry considered the question. "I'm trying to understand who I am apart from his influence. How much of me is really me, and how much is what he created? Ah, the essential question we all face, though few so dramatically as you." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly before growing serious. "Harry, consider this, Gellert trained you to be his weapon, yet when confronted with choices this past year, you chose compassion over power, friendship over advantage, protection over control. Using skills he taught me," Harry pointed out. "Precisely. You've taken his tools and repurposed them toward ends he never intended." Dumbledore leaned forward. "That, I believe, represents the truest form of breaking free from his influence, not rejecting the abilities he fostered, but redirecting them according to your own moral compass." The perspective helped Harry more than any explanation had before. He wasn't obligated to discard everything from his upbringing, only to choose consciously how to apply those lessons moving forward. As he left Dumbledore's office, Harry felt a growing resolution. He would never escape Grindelwald's influence entirely, it was too deeply embedded in his magical development, but he could transform that influence into something entirely his own. November brought the first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs Slytherin. Having joined the team as seeker after impressing during flying lessons, Harry approached the game with both excitement and strategic calculation. In the locker room, Oliver Wood delivered an impassioned speech about tactics and determination. Harry listened while mentally reviewing the Slytherin team's weaknesses he'd identified during practice observations. "Potter seems ready to single-handedly defeat Slytherin," George Weasley commented, noticing Harry's intense focus. Fred grinned. "Planning their downfall move by move, aren't you?" "Something like that," Harry admitted. Grindelwald had taught him to analyze opponents systematically, identifying patterns and vulnerabilities, a skill as applicable to Quidditch as to magical dueling. The match began in perfect flying conditions. Harry soared above the pitch, dividing his attention between searching for the snitch and monitoring the Slytherin seeker, Terence Higgs. Below, the teams battled fiercely, with Gryffindor gradually pulling ahead despite the Slytherin's superior brooms. Halfway through the game, Harry noticed something unusual, a bludger behaving erratically, changing direction mid-flight to target him specifically. He dodged its first assault, but the ball immediately reversed course and attacked again. "Someone's tampered with that bludger," Fred called, attempting to intercept it. Despite the Weasley twins' efforts to protect him, the rogue bludger relentlessly pursued Harry around the pitch. Wood called for a timeout. "The bludger's been fixed," Harry confirmed as the team huddled. "It's only targeting me." "We should lodge a complaint," Alicia Spinnet urged. "This is clearly sabotage." "No," Harry decided. "I can handle it. If you two focus on the other bludger and the rest of the team, I'll deal with this one myself." "That's mad," George protested. "It'll take your head off." "I've trained against worse," Harry said with grim confidence, thinking of Grindelwald's combat drills involving multiple attackers. "Trust me." When play resumed, Harry implemented a strategy combining Grindelwald's evasion techniques with his natural flying instinct. Rather than fleeing the bludger, he used its pursuit to his advantage, leading it in complex patterns that confused the Slytherin seeker and blocked their chasers' formations. The crowd watched in amazement as Harry transformed a deadly threat into a tactical asset. When he finally spotted the snitch, Harry executed a maneuver Grindelwald had drilled into him for escaping multiple opponents, a spiraling dive that temporarily disoriented the pursuing bludger while giving him a 3-second advantage. Those seconds were enough. Harry captured the snitch, clinching victory for Gryffindor moments before the bludger smashed into his extended arm, breaking it instantly. As he landed awkwardly, cradling his broken arm while still clutching the snitch, Harry felt a fierce satisfaction. He'd used Grindelwald's combat training to win a game the Dark Wizard would have dismissed as trivial, a small but meaningful reclamation of those skills for his own purposes. Lockhart appeared, insisting on healing Harry's arm despite protests. His botched spell removed Harry's bones entirely, necessitating an overnight stay in the hospital wing with Skeelgrow. That night, as Harry endured the painful process of regrowing 33 bones, a strange creature appeared beside his bed, a house elf named Dobby who tearfully confessed to enchanting the bludger. Dobby wanted Harry Potter injured enough to be sent home, the elf explained, twisting his pillowcase garment anxiously. Harry Potter must not remain at Hogwarts. Dark plots are unfolding. The diary? Harry guessed. We already found and contained it, Dobby. The elf's tennis ball eyes widened in shock. Harry Potter knows. Harry Potter has stopped it. Dumbledore has the diary, Harry confirmed. Whatever it was meant to do won't happen now. Dobby wrung his hands. Harry Potter has foiled one plot, yes, but dangers remain. Dark forces gather. Those who opposed he who must not be named are watched, threatened. And he lowered his voice dramatically, the other one returns to Britain. Harry's heart raced. What other one? Voldemort? Dobby shook his head violently, ears flapping. Not he who must not be named. The other Dark Wizard, the one from the continent. Dobby hears Master speaking of his movements. He searches for something, or someone. Grindelwald. Harry's throat tightened. When, Dobby? When did he arrive in Britain? Recently. Days ago. The elf looked terrified. Harry Potter must be careful. Both dark wizards seek him now. After extracting as much information as possible from the nervous elf, Harry lay awake despite his exhaustion. Grindelwald in Britain changed everything. The dark wizard wouldn't have abandoned his secure position in Eastern Europe without significant motivation, which meant he was accelerating whatever plans he had for Harry. The next morning, Harry reported Dobby's warning to Dumbledore, who received the news with grave concern. "I feared this might happen," the headmaster admitted. "Gellert has always been patient, but not indefinitely. Your continued rejection of his influence represents both a personal and strategic failure he cannot accept." "What will he do?" Harry asked. "Likely attempt to reclaim you, by persuasion if possible, by force if necessary." Dumbledore's expression hardened. "We will increase security accordingly, but you must be extraordinarily vigilant, Harry. Gellert's magical abilities remain formidable despite his age, and his strategic mind has only sharpened with time." "I'm not afraid of him," Harry said, surprising himself with the truth of it. "Not anymore." Dumbledore smiled slightly. "Fear would be rational when facing a wizard of Gellert's caliber. But I understand your sentiment. You've faced him in your mind all year and chosen your own path. The physical confrontation, when it comes, is merely the culmination of a battle you've already been fighting." December arrived with swirling snow and increased security measures. Students noticed the changes: additional magical barriers around the castle perimeter, aurors occasionally visible at Hogsmeade weekends, professors patrolling corridors after hours. Harry continued his unofficial defense group, now expanding their practice to include counterspells against more advanced dark magic. When Hermione questioned the advanced curriculum, Harry was honest. "Grindelwald is in Britain," he explained to her and Ron in the empty classroom after the others had left. "Dumbledore believes he'll try to reclaim me." Hermione gasped. "Here. At Hogwarts?" Eventually, Harry nodded grimly. "He's patient and strategic, he'll wait for the right opportunity." "Blimey," Ron whispered. "What are you going to do?" "Prepare," Harry said simply. "And help others prepare too. Whatever happens, I don't want anyone caught in the crossfire." As Christmas approached, most students prepared to return home for holidays. Harry would remain at Hogwarts under enhanced protection, along with a handful of others including Ron and Hermione, who had insisted on staying despite Harry's concerns. "We're not abandoning you," Hermione stated firmly when Harry suggested they be safer away from him. "Yeah, mate," Ron added. "We faced you-know-who last year. We can handle your evil foster dad." The simplified characterization almost made Harry smile despite the gravity of the situation. The morning students departed for holidays. Harry woke early, troubled by dreams of Grindelwald and Voldemort circling Hogwarts like predators. He slipped out of the dormitory for a pre-dawn walk, finding the corridors eerily silent. Near the astronomy tower, Harry sensed another presence, a familiar magical signature he'd felt all his childhood. He turned slowly, wand ready. "Hello, Harry," said Gellert Grindelwald, stepping from the shadows. The dark wizard looked older than when Harry had last seen him, but still formidable, tall and straight-backed, his white hair neatly combed, his mismatched eyes as piercing as ever. He wore elegant robes of midnight blue and carried no visible wand, though Harry knew the elder wand would be concealed within easy reach. "How did you get past the castle defenses?" Harry asked, maintaining a dueling stance Grindelwald himself had taught him. "I helped design similar protections in my youth," Grindelwald replied with a slight smile. "With Albus, ironically enough. Their weaknesses are familiar to me." He studied Harry with something like pride. "You look well. Hogwarts agrees with you, it seems. What do you want?" Harry kept his voice steady, mind racing through defensive options. "A conversation," Grindelwald said simply. "Is that so unreasonable after 11 years together?" He gestured to a nearby classroom. Shall we speak in private? I promise no harm will come to you. Harry considered his options. Running would achieve nothing. If Grindelwald wanted to attack, he could do so instantly. Fighting would be futile against the Elder Wand unless Harry could summon help. A conversation might at least buy time. After you, Harry said, unwilling to turn his back on the Dark Wizard. Grindelwald smiled approvingly. Caution. Good. He entered the classroom, conjuring two comfortable chairs with a casual wave of his hand, wandless magic beyond most wizards' capabilities. They sat facing each other, wands visible but not directly pointed. Harry maintained his occlumency shields, knowing Grindelwald would test them. Your mental barriers have improved, Grindelwald noted, confirming Harry's suspicion. Dumbledore's tutelage, I presume. My own practice, Harry corrected. Impressive. Grindelwald leaned back, studying Harry like a complex puzzle. You've changed, Harry. Developed in ways I didn't anticipate. I find myself not displeased, despite your rejection of our shared purpose. It was never my purpose, Harry said firmly. It was yours. You just raised me to implement it. Grindelwald inclined his head, acknowledging the point. Perhaps. But you cannot deny the results of that upbringing. Your magical development is extraordinary. Your strategic mind, exceptional. These gifts remain, regardless of how you choose to apply them. That's why I'm not trying to erase you from my life, Harry said, surprising himself with the admission. I'm repurposing what you taught me, not rejecting it entirely. An interesting approach. Grindelwald's expression grew calculating. And yet, have you considered that in embracing Dumbledore's vision, you're merely exchanging one mentor's purpose for another's? Albus has his own plans for you, Harry. His own vision of the greater good. The difference, Harry countered, is that Dumbledore doesn't hide his agenda. He doesn't lie about my parents' beliefs or manipulate me with selective information. Grindelwald's eyes flashed. I shaped information to protect you from confusion during development. To provide clarity of purpose. You lied, Harry said flatly. My parents fought against everything you believe in. They died opposing magical supremacy and wizard domination. You knew that and deliberately misled me. I presented a more nuanced interpretation of their choices, Grindelwald argued. Your parents opposed Voldemort's methods, his madness. The core principle of wizard liberation remains valid regardless. Liberation or domination? Harry challenged. My mother was Muggle-born. She believed in harmony between worlds, not subjugation. Grindelwald sighed. You're young, Harry. Idealistic, as I once was. As Albus was. The harmony you envision is a fantasy that ignores fundamental realities about power and its responsibilities. Or maybe your vision ignores fundamental realities about humanity and cooperation, Harry countered. Maybe true strength comes from unity, not dominance. A gleam of respect appeared in Grindelwald's eyes. You argue your position well. Another skill I fostered. He leaned forward. But rhetoric aside, you face practical concerns. Voldemort returns to power, gathering followers. Your friends become targets simply through association with you. Meanwhile, the wizarding world remains fractured, vulnerable. And you're offering what, exactly? Harry asked warily. An alternative, Grindelwald said smoothly. Not a return to our former arrangement, clearly, you've outgrown that. But an alliance of mutual benefit. I have resources, knowledge, and capabilities Dumbledore cannot or will not access. Together, we could protect your friends more effectively than Hogwarts defenses alone. In exchange for what? Your continued development under my guidance, part-time, perhaps. A few weeks each summer, occasional correspondence. I would not interfere with your Hogwarts education or your friendships. Grindelwald's voice grew persuasive. Think of it, Harry, the best of both worlds. Dumbledore's ethical framework with my practical power. You need not choose between us entirely. The offer was tempting in its rationality. Harry could maintain his current life while gaining additional protection for his friends and access to Grindelwald's vast magical knowledge. The Dark Wizard was offering compromise rather than demanding submission, a significant concession. What about your ultimate goal? Harry asked. Wizard dominance over Muggles. Goals evolve, Grindelwald said with a shrug. Mine have, moderated with age and experience. Perhaps what wizard kind needs is not domination but strategic integration, gradual, controlled emergence rather than perpetual hiding or sudden revelation. He made it sound reasonable, pragmatic, exactly as he'd done throughout Harry's childhood. Grindelwald's greatest weapon had always been his ability to make extreme positions sound like common sense. I need time to consider, Harry said finally. Grindelwald nodded, seemingly satisfied. A measured response. Consider it carefully, Harry. But don't delay too long. Voldemort's agents move more openly each day. He stood gracefully. I'll contact you after the holidays for your decision. How did you really get into Hogwarts? Harry asked as Grindelwald moved toward the door. The truth this time. Grindelwald smiled enigmatically. Ask your friend Dobby. House elves have their own magic, quite useful for circumventing certain barriers when properly motivated. He paused. Regardless of your decision, Harry, I am proud of what you're becoming. You have surpassed being merely my heir to become something uniquely your own. Remember that. With that, he was gone, leaving Harry alone with tumultuous thoughts. The conversation had been nothing like he expected, no demands, no threats, just a rational proposal that acknowledged Harry's independence while offering continued connection. Was it genuine evolution in Grindelwald's thinking, or merely a more sophisticated manipulation? Harry reported the encounter to Dumbledore immediately, recounting Grindelwald's proposal in detail. The headmaster listened gravely, his expression thoughtful. A masterful approach, Dumbledore commented when Harry finished. Gellert always excelled at adapting his tactics to circumstance. When direct reclamation proved impossible, he shifted to negotiation and compromise. Could he be sincere? Harry asked. About moderating his goals. Dumbledore considered this carefully. Gellert rarely lies directly, he prefers partial truths arranged to create desired impressions. His goals may indeed have evolved, but the core philosophy almost certainly remains. The question becomes whether you can engage with him selectively without being drawn back into his worldview. What would you do in my position? Harry asked. I cannot answer that, Harry. This must be your choice entirely. Dumbledore's blue eyes held Harry's. But I will say this, Gellert Grindelwald is extraordinarily persuasive. His greatest victims were not those who opposed him, but those who believed they could work with him while maintaining their independence. The warning resonated with Harry's own instincts. Despite the temptation of Grindelwald's offer, something felt fundamentally wrong about attempting to balance between such opposing visions. I think I already know my answer, Harry said slowly. But I should discuss this with Ron and Hermione first. Dumbledore smiled. A wise approach. True friends provide perspectives we cannot see ourselves. That evening, in the nearly empty Gryffindor common room, Harry shared everything with Ron and Hermione, Grindelwald's appearance, his offer, and Harry's conflicted response. He's manipulating you, Hermione said immediately. Offering exactly what would tempt you most, protection for friends, continued access to knowledge, and a compromise that seems reasonable. Ron nodded vigorously. It's like a spider drawing you into its web one strand at a time. First it's summer visits, then regular correspondence, then special training, before you know it, you're back under his influence. But what if he really has moderated his views? Harry asked, playing devil's advocate against his own instincts. He's brilliant, adaptable. People change. Some people change, Hermione acknowledged. But you've described someone who spent decades pursuing magical domination, who lied to you systematically throughout your childhood. That level of dedication to an ideology doesn't typically undergo genuine transformation. And even if it did, Ron added surprisingly, you'd still be tying yourself to your past instead of building your future. Isn't that what this whole year has been about? Breaking free from him? Harry looked at his friends with newfound appreciation. Their straightforward insights cut through complexities he'd been entangling himself in. You're both right, he admitted. I think I knew the answer, but part of me still responds to him, still wants his approval on some level. He sighed. Pathetic, isn't it? It's human, Hermione corrected gently. He raised you, Harry. Of course part of you still seeks his validation. The important thing is recognizing that impulse without letting it control your decisions. Ron clapped Harry's shoulder. Besides, mate, you've got us now. And Dumbledore. And the Weasleys. And probably half of Hogwarts after your defense lessons. You don't need him anymore. The simple truth in Ron's statement settled something in Harry's mind. Whatever Grindelwald offered, it came with invisible chains, chains Harry had spent all year breaking. He wouldn't willingly put them back on, no matter how attractively they were presented. Christmas at Hogwarts passed peacefully, with no further appearance from Grindelwald. Harry received his first proper Christmas presents, a hand-knitted sweater from Mrs. Weasley, books from Hermione, Quidditch gear from Ron, and various small gifts from other friends. Each represented connection rather than obligation, freely given rather than strategically calculated. On New Year's Eve, as they sat in the Great Hall for a special midnight feast, Hermione suddenly stiffened beside Harry. I've just realized something, she whispered. About Grindelwald and Voldemort both being after you. What? Harry asked, instantly alert. They're approaching from opposite directions, but toward the same goal, controlling you and your power. Her eyes widened. What if they're not working independently? What if one is planning to use the other's actions? Harry frowned. You think they're coordinating? Not directly, Hermione clarified. But Grindelwald is strategic. What if he's anticipating Voldemort's movements? Using the threat as leverage in his offer to you? The insight clicked into place with Harry's own understanding of Grindelwald's methods. The Dark Wizard excelled at positioning himself as the solution to problems he'd sometimes created himself. Could he be doing the same now, using Voldemort's threat to make his own offer more appealing? We need to research connections between them, Harry decided. Historical interactions, shared followers, anything that might suggest coordination or manipulation. The investigation occupied much of January. Between classes, Harry, Ron, and Hermione scoured historical records, recent Daily Prophet articles, and even Lockhart's useless books for any mention of connections between the two dark wizards. Here's something, Hermione said one evening in the library. During Grindelwald's rise in the 1930s, several British pureblood families supported him financially, including the Malfoys, Blacks, and Lestranges. The same families that later became Death Eaters, Harry noted. Exactly. And look at this passage, after Grindelwald's defeat in 1945, many of his British sympathizers transferred their support to Tom Riddle, an emerging magical prodigy who shared certain ideological positions while promising more direct action. Voldemort inherited Grindelwald's British supporters, Harry summarized. That creates potential communication channels between them. Ron looked up from his own book. Here's something weird. The Lestrange vault at Gringotts was accessed last month by someone using an old authorization code from the 1940s. The goblins investigated but found the paperwork technically valid. Grindelwald, Harry said with certainty. He's accessing old supporter resources. He drummed his fingers on the table. But why? He has his own wealth, his own network. Unless. Hermione bit her lip. Unless he's looking for something specific. Something those families had access to. Something related to Voldemort, Harry concluded. The pieces are connecting. We need to tell Dumbledore. The headmaster received their findings with grave interest, confirming their suspicions while adding context. The Lestrange family did indeed support Gellert during his rise, Dumbledore explained. They later became among Voldemort's most fanatical followers. If Gellert is accessing their vault now, it suggests he seeks specific artifacts, possibly related to Voldemort's methods of survival and restoration. You mean like the diary? Harry asked. Precisely. The diary contained a fragment of Voldemort himself, a method of preserving consciousness beyond physical death. Gellert would find such magic both abhorrent and fascinating. So he's trying to understand Voldemort's methods, Hermione reasoned. To better counter them? Or to use that knowledge himself? Both, perhaps, Dumbledore said thoughtfully. Gellert never sought immortality himself, he considered it unnatural, but understanding an enemy's techniques would appeal to his strategic mind. And it gives him another selling point with me, Harry added bitterly. Special knowledge about defeating Voldemort. Dumbledore nodded. Gellert never wastes an opportunity. Every move serves multiple purposes. The conversation reinforced Harry's decision to reject Grindelwald's offer. Whatever the Dark Wizard's true motivations, they serve his own agenda first and foremost, with Harry's well-being merely a factor in complex calculations. As winter thawed into spring, Harry received another communication from Grindelwald, not a personal visit but a letter delivered by an unfamiliar eagle owl. Harry, your silence suggests your decision. While disappointing, it is not unexpected. You have always possessed a stubborn independence, even as a child. Nevertheless, I leave you with information that may prove vital. Voldemort created multiple anchors like the diary you intercepted, objects containing fragments of his soul, preventing his final death. They are hidden in locations significant to his history. One such anchor resides within Hogwarts itself, brought there decades ago when he returned as a teaching applicant. Dumbledore suspects this but lacks specific knowledge of its nature or location. This information is freely given, without obligation. Use it as you will. Despite our diverging paths, I remain, your teacher. Harry shared the letter with Dumbledore immediately. The headmaster read it several times, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This is consistent with my own research, he confirmed. I've suspected for years that Tom created Horcruxes, the dark objects Gellert describes, but had not confirmed their multiple nature or the presence of one at Hogwarts. Is Grindelwald telling the truth? Harry asked. Most likely, yes. Gellert rarely offers outright falsehoods, especially when truth serves his purpose equally well. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. By providing this information, he demonstrates value without demanding immediate reciprocation, a sophisticated recruitment technique. The implied message is clear: imagine what else I could teach you if you reconsidered. Harry nodded, recognizing the tactic. So what do we do about the Horcrux at Hogwarts? We locate and destroy it, naturally, Dumbledore said with determination. Gellert's motivations may be complex, but the information itself is valuable regardless. Over the following weeks, Harry assisted Dumbledore in a systematic search of areas connected to Tom Riddle's time at Hogwarts. They focused particularly on the Chamber of Secrets, which Dumbledore had located years ago but never fully explored. Deep in the chamber, beyond the main hall with Slytherin's statue, they discovered a hidden study containing shelves of dark artifacts. Among them sat a tarnished diadem radiating malevolent energy. Ravenclaw's lost diadem, Dumbledore breathed, carefully levitating the object without touching it. Corrupted into a Horcrux. Even I had not suspected this. How do we destroy it? Harry asked. With great caution, Dumbledore replied. Horcruxes resist conventional destruction. We'll need basilisk venom, fiend fire, or similarly powerful destructive magic. They successfully destroyed the diadem using a controlled application of cursed fire in a magically contained environment. As the Horcrux screamed and disintegrated, Harry felt both triumph and unease. The information leading to this success had come from Grindelwald, another example of the Dark Wizard's training and knowledge proving valuable despite Harry's rejection of his ideology. "Your thoughts seem troubled, Harry," Dumbledore noted as they left the chamber. "I'm wondering if I can ever truly separate myself from his influence," Harry admitted. "Everything useful I know came from him. Every skill I have, he taught me. Even this victory traces back to his information." "Consider this perspective," Dumbledore suggested. "The knowledge Gellert imparted was never truly his to begin with. Magic belongs to no single wizard. The skills he taught you existed long before him and will continue long after. He was a conduit, not a creator." The reframing helped Harry see beyond his mentor's shadow. Grindelwald hadn't invented the magic he'd taught, he'd simply passed it on, as countless teachers had done throughout magical history. The techniques themselves were neutral, only their application reflected the wizard wielding them. As the school year neared its end, tension mounted among the staff. Security increased further, with Aurors now openly patrolling Hogsmeade and the castle perimeter. Rumors spread among students, though few connected the preparations to Harry specifically. In mid-May, during another Quidditch match, Harry spotted an unusual magical disturbance near the Forbidden Forest, a shimmer in the air that suggested powerful concealment charms. He reported it to Dumbledore immediately after the game. "Gellert testing our defenses," the headmaster confirmed grimly. "Or perhaps Voldemort's agents. Either way, they grow bolder." "What happens when school ends?" Harry asked the question that had worried him for months. "I can't return to the Burrow, I'd be endangering the Weasleys." "We've prepared secure accommodations," Dumbledore assured him. "A property under the Fidelius charm, with myself as secret keeper. Various Order members will provide both protection and companionship throughout summer." The plan sounded comprehensive, but Harry couldn't shake the feeling that both Grindelwald and Voldemort were merely biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came sooner than anyone expected. During the final week of term, as students prepared for end-of-year exams, Harry received an urgent message from Dobby the house elf. The creature appeared in the Gryffindor common room late at night, trembling with fear. "Harry Potter must hide. They is coming tonight. Both of them." Dobby wrung his ears anxiously. "Dark wizards making temporary alliance. Coming for Harry Potter together. Grindelwald and Voldemort?" Harry asked incredulously. "Working together. Not friends," Dobby clarified. "Using each other. Dark Continent wizard helps Snakeface wizard get new body in exchange for helping capture Harry Potter. Then they fight each other later." The news sent Harry racing to Dumbledore's office, where he found the headmaster already mobilizing the Order of the Phoenix. "We received similar intelligence from other sources," Dumbledore confirmed. "Gellert appears to have provided Voldemort with an accelerated restoration ritual in exchange for assistance capturing you. A temporary alliance of convenience that neither intends to honor beyond its immediate purpose. So they're both coming here. To Hogwarts. Tonight, we believe. During the end-of-term feast when the castle is at its most vulnerable, all students in one location, faculty focused on celebrations." Dumbledore's expression was resolute. "We've prepared contingencies for precisely this scenario." Harry listened as Dumbledore outlined the defensive plan. Students would be secured in their dormitories while Order members and trusted professors established a protective perimeter. Key targets like Harry would be moved to secure locations within the castle. "I don't want to hide," Harry stated firmly. "I've been training for this confrontation all year. Both of them want me, let me be part of the defense." Dumbledore studied him thoughtfully. "Your magical abilities certainly exceed many adult wizards, and your specific knowledge of Gellert's techniques could prove invaluable." He nodded slowly. "Very well. You will remain with me, but under strict protective protocols." As evening approached, Harry met with Ron and Hermione one last time before they would be evacuated with other students. "This feels wrong," Hermione said, hugging Harry fiercely. "Leaving you to face them. You've done more than enough already," Harry assured her. "The research, the planning, the support. I wouldn't have made it this far without you both. Ron gripped his shoulder. Just remember everything we practiced in the defense group. And don't try to be a hero. If things go bad, run. I will, Harry promised, though all three knew he was unlikely to flee any confrontation. As darkness fell, Hogwarts transformed from school to fortress. Order members took positions throughout the castle, while professors established advanced wards around vulnerable entry points. Harry remained with Dumbledore in the headmaster's office, which offered both security and strategic oversight via magical monitoring devices. How will they attempt entry? Harry asked, studying the silver instruments that showed Hogwarts' defensive status. Gellert knows the castle's weaknesses from our youth, Dumbledore explained. Though I've modified many defenses since then, some architectural vulnerabilities cannot be eliminated entirely. I suspect they'll. A silver instrument suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine, spinning rapidly. The astronomy tower, Dumbledore said grimly. As I feared. The highest point is always most vulnerable to aerial assault. Through the office window, Harry spotted flashes of light atop the distant tower, spellfire. The attack had begun. Stay close to me, Dumbledore instructed, drawing the Elder Wand. We will observe from a protected position first, assessing their numbers and strategy before engaging. They moved swiftly through the castle, using passages known only to the headmaster. As they neared the astronomy tower, the sounds of battle intensified, shouts, explosions, the distinctive crack of powerful spells colliding with defensive barriers. From a concealed alcove, they observed the situation. Death Eaters had breached the tower top, where they engaged Order members in fierce combat. Below, in the corridor leading to the tower stairs, Professors McGonagall and Flitwick dueled four masked figures with remarkable coordination. I don't see Grindelwald or Voldemort, Harry whispered. They would not lead the initial assault, Dumbledore replied. Both prefer to enter once defenses are compromised, conserving their power for key objectives. As if summoned by Dumbledore's assessment, a new magical signature pressed against the castle's outer wards, immensely powerful, controlled, and hauntingly familiar to Harry. Grindelwald had arrived. The Dark Wizard made no dramatic entrance. Instead, the astronomy tower's defensive barriers simply yielded. Where Death Eaters had fought to break through, Grindelwald manipulated the magical structure itself, creating a temporary passage that bypassed rather than destroyed Hogwarts' protections, a far more sophisticated approach than brute force. Through the gap strode Gellert Grindelwald, looking exactly as he had during their December meeting, composed, elegant, and radiating controlled power. Behind him floated an ornate container that pulsed with dark magic. Voldemort, Harry whispered, recognizing the magical signature even in this transitional form. In some kind of temporary body. A homunculus, Dumbledore confirmed grimly. A magically created vessel housing his disembodied spirit until a proper restoration ritual can be performed. The battlefield dynamics shifted immediately with Grindelwald's arrival. Death Eaters rallied around the container carrying Voldemort's essence, while Order members fell back to more defensible positions. Grindelwald himself cast no aggressive spells but systematically dismantled defensive enchantments with precise, economical wandwork. It's time, Dumbledore said, straightening to his full height. Stay behind me, Harry. Whatever happens, do not engage Gellert directly unless absolutely necessary. They stepped from concealment, Dumbledore's presence immediately drawing all eyes. Fighting paused as combatants registered the arrival of the most powerful wizard of the age. Albus, Grindelwald greeted conversationally, as if they'd met for tea rather than battle. Your security improvements are impressive. The layered intent-based wards were particularly clever. Your infiltration technique shows your usual elegance, Gellert, Dumbledore replied with equal calm. Though your choice of allies remains disappointing. Grindelwald's eyes flicked to the container. A temporary arrangement of mutual convenience. Though I must admit, Tom's methods of survival are ingeniously perverse. The homunculus stirred, a high, cold voice emerging from it. Dumbledore. And Potter. How convenient. Harry stepped forward beside Dumbledore, wand ready. 2 dark wizards for the price of 1. Efficient. Grindelwald's mismatched eyes settled on Harry with something like pride. Still developing that sharp tongue, I see. Good. He addressed the Death Eaters without looking away from Harry. Secure the perimeter. Ensure no reinforcements interrupt us. The Death Eaters moved to obey, engaging the remaining Order members in renewed combat. McGonagall and Flitwick held their position at the corridor entrance, preventing further enemy advance into the castle proper. I offered you partnership, Harry, Grindelwald said, his voice carrying over the peripheral fighting. You chose isolation instead. But circumstances evolve. Tonight presents a new opportunity. I'm not interested in opportunities from either of you, Harry replied firmly. The homunculus laughed coldly. The boy thinks he has choices. How charming. He always has choices, Dumbledore countered. That's what you both fail to understand about Harry. His power comes not from your training, Gellert, or from your inadvertent magical transfer, Tom. It comes from his capacity to choose his own path despite your influences. Noble sentiments, Grindelwald acknowledged. But practically speaking, Harry faces limited options tonight. This castle will fall. The only question is whether he leaves with me voluntarily or whether more, forceful measures become necessary. Or whether he fulfills the prophecy by dying tonight, the homunculus added maliciously. Once my restoration is complete. Grindelwald smiled thinly. You misunderstand our arrangement, Tom. Harry leaves alive, regardless of other outcomes. The tension between the Dark Wizards was palpable, their alliance clearly tactical rather than genuine. Harry recognized the opening their mutual distrust created. You're both delusional, Harry said clearly, addressing both Dark Wizards. Neither of you is taking me anywhere. Neither of you controls my destiny. Brave words, Grindelwald commented. But misplaced confidence. Even Albus cannot protect you from both of us simultaneously. Perhaps not, Dumbledore agreed surprisingly. But Harry doesn't need my protection. He only needs my trust. He glanced at Harry. Which he has completely. The declaration sent warmth through Harry's chest, so different from Grindelwald's conditional approval or Voldemort's dismissive contempt. Enough talk, the homunculus hissed. Capture the boy. Kill Dumbledore. Complete our agreement, Grindelwald. In due time, Grindelwald replied, his attention never leaving Harry and Dumbledore. First, a demonstration of why cooperation remains Harry's best option. With blinding speed, he drew the Elder Wand and cast a spell unlike anything Harry had seen before, a cascade of blue-white energy that split into dozens of individual curses, targeting every Order member simultaneously. Only Dumbledore's instantaneous shield saved them, a dome of golden light intercepting Grindelwald's attack. The magical collision produced a thunderous boom that shook the corridor. Impressive as always, Albus, Grindelwald acknowledged. But you cannot defend all fronts at once. He was right. While Dumbledore countered Grindelwald's attack, Death Eaters pressed their advantage against the other defenders. McGonagall took a cutting curse to the shoulder, while Kingsley Shacklebolt was driven back by multiple opponents. Harry made his decision. Grindelwald expected him to either flee or fight conventionally. Voldemort anticipated predictable Hogwarts-taught spells. Neither expected the approach Harry had been developing all year, a hybrid magical style combining Grindelwald's advanced techniques with standard defensive magic, creating something entirely new. Instead of attacking either Dark Wizard directly, Harry targeted the corridor's architectural supports with a series of precisely calculated spells, causing a controlled collapse that separated Grindelwald and Voldemort's homunculus from their Death Eater support while creating cover for the Order members. Ingenious, Grindelwald commented, easily shielding himself from falling debris. Using environment rather than direct confrontation. A technique I taught you in your 8th year. But not how I applied it, Harry countered, already implementing the second phase of his spontaneous plan. He cast a modified Patronus charm, another hybrid creation combining the standard happiness-fueled guardian with elements of binding magic Grindelwald had taught him. The resulting silvery stag charged not Dementors but the homunculus container itself, surrounding it with pure magical energy antithetical to Voldemort's fractured soul. The container shuddered, dark vapor leaking from its seams as the incomplete spirit within recoiled from the positive force. "Impossible," the high voice shrieked. "Grindelwald, control your protégé." "Actually, I find his innovation fascinating," Grindelwald remarked, making no move to help Voldemort. Harry always did show remarkable creativity in applying principles beyond their intended purpose. The temporary alliance was fracturing exactly as Harry had hoped. With Dumbledore engaging Grindelwald directly and Harry's modified Patronus disrupting Voldemort, the power dynamic shifted. Order members rallied, pushing back against the isolated Death Eaters. Harry pressed his advantage, drawing on both his formal education and Grindelwald's training to cast a complex series of spells targeting the homunculus container. The vessel began to crack, leaking more dark vapor as Voldemort's essence fought to remain contained. "Enough games," Grindelwald declared suddenly. With a precise flick of the Elder Wand, he simultaneously neutralized Harry's Patronus and stabilized the homunculus container. "Impressive as your development has been, Harry, you remain outmatched in raw power." "But not in purpose," Harry countered, never pausing in his casting. "Or in support." As if on cue, the corridor filled with new combatants, not Order reinforcements but Hogwarts students. The defense group Harry had trained all year moved with coordinated precision, led by Hermione and Ron, who had apparently refused evacuation. They engaged Death Eaters with surprising effectiveness, their numbers and unexpected skill creating chaotic advantages. "You taught them," Grindelwald realized, watching the students implement modified versions of techniques he'd once taught Harry. "You passed on my methods." "I repurposed them," Harry corrected. "Just like I'm repurposing everything you taught me." The battle expanded, with students and Death Eaters exchanging spells throughout the corridor while Dumbledore and Grindelwald continued their own extraordinary duel. Magical energy crackled between them, neither gaining clear advantage but Dumbledore gradually maneuvering to separate Grindelwald from both Harry and Voldemort's container. Seeing his allies faltering against the unexpected student resistance, Voldemort's homunculus suddenly emitted a pulse of foul magic that knocked everyone nearby off their feet. The container rose higher, dark vapor coalescing around it. "If Grindelwald won't fulfill his part of our bargain," the cold voice declared, "I shall take matters into my own hands." A tendril of dark energy shot toward Harry, who countered with the most powerful shield charm he could muster. The collision created a connection between them, not unlike the effect Harry had experienced in the chamber with Quirrell, but stronger, more defined. Through it, he felt Voldemort's rage, his desperation for restoration, and his growing fear of both Grindelwald and Dumbledore. Harry recognized the connection for what it was, linked magic through the cursed scar, and did something neither Dark Wizard expected. Instead of fighting the connection, he channeled his own magic through it, directly into Voldemort's unstable form. The effect was catastrophic for the homunculus. Harry's magic, carrying the same protective energy that had destroyed Quirrell, surged through the connection and into the temporary vessel. The container shattered, releasing a screaming wraith that spiraled upward before fleeing through the castle walls. "Remarkable," Grindelwald commented, momentarily distracted from his duel with Dumbledore. "You've driven him from his vessel without destroying his essence entirely. An impressive feat of magical intuition." The distraction cost him. Dumbledore's next spell caught Grindelwald squarely, temporarily binding his movements. The Elder Wand remained clutched in his hand, but his casting was momentarily disrupted. Harry seized the opportunity, directing his hybrid fighting style not at Grindelwald directly but at the architectural elements around him, further isolating the Dark Wizard from potential escape routes. Simultaneously, Order members and students pressed their advantage against the disorganized Death Eaters, many of whom began retreating after witnessing Voldemort's dispersion. Grindelwald assessed the deteriorating situation with characteristic calm. "It seems I've underestimated your development, Harry. And your influence on others." He freed himself from Dumbledore's binding with a complex wandless counterspell. A strategic withdrawal appears prudent. You're not going anywhere, Gellert, Dumbledore stated firmly. Not this time. Aren't I? Grindelwald smiled enigmatically. Consider this, old friend, I could continue this battle, causing significant casualties on both sides. Perhaps I'd prevail, perhaps not. But either outcome would weaken us all while Tom regroups elsewhere. His gaze shifted to Harry. Or I could depart now, leaving you both to celebrate a partial victory while preserving my resources for the greater conflict to come. You're proposing another delay, not a resolution, Dumbledore observed. I'm acknowledging evolving circumstances, Grindelwald corrected. Harry has demonstrated capabilities beyond my projection models. His hybrid magical approach deserves further study before our next encounter. His mismatched eyes fixed on Harry. You continue to surprise me. That is, refreshing. Before anyone could respond, Grindelwald executed a move so swift it barely registered, a complex pattern with the Elder Wand that created a localized apparition field within Hogwarts' anti-apparition wards. The magical contradiction should have been impossible, but the Elder Wand's unique properties made it viable for mere seconds, long enough for Grindelwald to disappear with a crack, taking several Death Eaters with him. The remaining Dark Wizards, seeing their leaders gone, fought desperately for escape. Some succeeded in fleeing down the castle's many corridors, others fell to combined order and student spellwork. As the fighting subsided, Harry found himself at the center of an impromptu celebration. Students from his defense group, many sporting minor injuries but none seriously harmed, gathered around him, excitedly recounting their individual contributions to the battle. Did you see Neville's shield charm? Blocked 2 Death Eaters at once. And Hermione's binding hex, that was brilliant. Ron coordinated our whole flank like a proper general. Amid the excited chatter, Dumbledore approached Harry with a mixture of pride and concern. Are you injured? Nothing serious, Harry assured him, though exhaustion pulled at his limbs. What about Grindelwald? And Voldemort? Both escaped, though in very different states, Dumbledore said gravely. Voldemort's essence has been severely weakened, it will take him significant time to create another vessel or attempt full restoration. As for Gellert, he sighed. He remains as formidable and adaptable as ever. He'll be back, Harry stated with certainty. Yes, but not immediately. Tonight taught him caution, I think. Dumbledore surveyed the corridor, where Order members were securing captured Death Eaters while Madame Pomfrey treated the injured. More importantly, tonight taught him that you are not simply his creation anymore. You've become something entirely your own, something neither he nor I fully anticipated. The observation resonated deeply with Harry. Throughout the battle, he had drawn on Grindelwald's training, Hogwarts teachings, and his own innovations without being defined by any single influence. His magic had become uniquely his, neither dark nor light but powerfully purposeful. What happens now? Harry asked. We secure the castle. Treat the wounded. Prepare for next time. Dumbledore smiled slightly. And you, Harry, continue becoming who you are meant to be, not Gellert's heir, not Voldemort's prophesied enemy, but simply yourself. That, I believe, is the most powerful position of all. The final days of term passed in a blur of activity. The Ministry arrived to investigate the attack, while the Daily Prophet published sensationalized accounts of the Battle of Astronomy Tower. Students who had participated received special commendations, with Harry's defense group recognized for extraordinary preparation and courage. On the Hogwarts Express home, Harry sat with Ron, Hermione, and several other defense group members, their compartment buzzing with excited recollections and summer plans. Mum's written 3 times already, Ron reported, making sure you're still coming to stay in August after your time at headquarters. Wouldn't miss it, Harry assured him. The summer arrangements had been finalized, he would spend July at the Order's headquarters under enhanced protection, then 2 weeks at the Burrow before returning to Hogwarts. My parents want to meet you too, Hermione added. Though they're a bit alarmed by everything that's happened. I may have downplayed the danger in my letters home. Harry smiled, appreciating the simple normalcy of friends making plans despite extraordinary circumstances. Last summer, he had been Grindelwald's reluctant heir, isolated and conflicted. This summer, he would be surrounded by people who knew his true background yet accepted him anyway. As the train approached London, Hermione asked the question Harry had been contemplating himself, "Do you think it's really over? With Grindelwald, I mean." "No," Harry said honestly. "He's reassessing, not retreating permanently. He still believes in his vision for the wizarding world, and he still sees me as part of that vision somehow." "But you've shown him you're not his weapon anymore," Ron pointed out. "That's got to count for something." "It does," Harry agreed. "He'll approach differently next time, less as a mentor reclaiming a student and more as an equal seeking an ally." He gazed out the window at the passing countryside. In a strange way, defeating him earned his respect more than following him ever did. "That's rather twisted," Hermione observed. "That's Grindelwald," Harry shrugged. "Everything with him is complex, layered, strategic. But I understand him better now, not because he shaped me, but because I've moved beyond him while still recognizing his influence." As the train pulled into King's Cross, Harry gathered his belongings with a sense of completion. The past year had transformed him from Grindelwald's carefully crafted weapon into something the Dark Wizard had never intended, a young wizard capable of drawing on dark training for light purposes, of combining opposing magical philosophies into something new, of making choices based on his own moral compass rather than imposed ideology. On the platform, members of the Order waited to escort Harry to headquarters. Before joining them, he turned to his friends one last time. "Thank you," he said simply. "For everything this year. For helping me figure out who I am beyond who he tried to make me." "That's what friends do," Ron replied with characteristic straightforwardness. "Besides," Hermione added with a smile, "who you're becoming is rather remarkable. Not Grindelwald's heir, but entirely your own person." As Harry walked toward his future, he carried with him the skills Grindelwald had taught him, the values his parents had died for, and the connections he'd formed himself. The Dark Wizard had indeed made him, just not in the way he'd intended. Harry had taken that foundation and built something entirely his own. He had broken the chains of his past without denying their existence. And in doing so, he had discovered the most powerful magic of all, the freedom to choose his own path forward. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.